Chapter 1. The inciting incident. A pale mist clung to the edge of Birchwood Estate's ancient forest, drifting like a silent spectre through the grove of towering birch trees at dawn's first light. The hush was broken by the sharp report of a gunshot, echoing through the damp air and rolling across the manicured lawns. Birds scattered into the grey sky, their startled cries swallowed by the stillness that followed. Inside the grand drawing-room of the estate's manor, Lady Penelope Carrington sat bolt upright at her writing desk, quill suspended above the parchment. She had been drafting invitations for the weekend's gala lavish affair marking the bicentennial of the Carrington fortune. The shot had sent her heart racing. By all that is holy, she whispered, rising unsteadily. Servants on duty in the corridor froze, cups clattering to saucers as the echo reached even the deepest corners of the house. Within moments, a small crowd had gathered on the veranda overlooking the forest. Lord Adrian Carrington, Lady Penelope's husband and master of the estate, stood peering through his telescope toward the woods. His finely tailored morning coat hung stiffly from his shoulders, but his posture was unnaturally tense. He lowered the instrument with a pale face. "Someone is hurt," he said quietly. "I can see a figure lying near the old birch clearing." Word spread like wildfire through the house. Servants exchanged frightened glances. Lady Penelope's hand trembled as she gripped the banister. In the midst of the commotion, a footman burst into the hall breathless. "My lady, my lord, there's been an accident. Mr. Fitzwilliam is down by the hollow birch log. He's bleeding. Fitzwilliam, Henry Fitzwilliam, the Carringtons' long-trusted gamekeeper and friend to many in the village. Always polite, always dependable, hardly someone likely to find himself in mortal peril, and yet blood glistened on his tweed jacket. A dark stain spreading across the forest floor. Lady Penelope caught hold of her husband's arm. "Adrian, what shall we do?" He pressed a reassuring hand to her shoulder. "We fetch the doctor at once, and then we send for Mr. Hercule Poirot." The name had scarcely passed his lips before her eyes widened. None among them doubted that. Only the great detective's little grey cells could unravel this puzzle. For not even the Carringtons were spared the unsettling whisper that ran through the county. Lady's maid found the hollow birch elm open, revealing a scrap of paper scrawled with a single word: vendetta. When the doctor arrived, he dismounted hastily from his carriage, bag in hand, and followed the group through the dew-soaked grass. Together they navigated the narrow path until the forest opened into the birch clearing. There, draped over an upturned log of pale, smooth bark, lay Mr. Fitzwilliam. His face was ashen. A small wound glistened on his temple where a bullet had grazed him. "He is alive, but unconscious," the doctor murmured after a quick examination. "It is surprising that he wasn't killed outright. He must have stumbled after the shot." Lord Carrington knelt beside the man, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Henry, can you hear me? What happened?" Fitzwilliam's eyelids fluttered, but no words came. The doctor placed a hand lightly on the gamekeeper's wrist and nodded. "He'll recover. But time is of the essence. Let us get him back indoors." As the carriage bore Fitzwilliam away, Lady Penelope noticed a curious sight. The hollow birch log split open like a broken shell, revealing its secret interior. Inside lay not only the blank billet, but also a small, folded piece of paper. She stooped, retrieved it with gloved fingers, and studied the crimson-stained message. "Vendetta." A murmur rippled through the assembled onlookers. "Vendetta," echoed the doctor, glancing from the note to the bloodstain on the log. "This suggests premeditation. Someone wanted to send a message. But to whom?" Lady Penelope whispered, her voice trembling. "Henry is no one's enemy." Lord Carrington exchanged a troubled look with his wife. "It seems someone holds a grudge against our dear friend." Or perhaps against us this estate. Behind them, the shrill call of a summons rang out. A smartly dressed young woman hurrying through the trees emerged, breathing heavily. She carried a telegram in her hand. "My lady, this arrived for you less than an hour ago." She handed over the envelope, its edges creased from transit. Lady Penelope's hands shook as she broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet. "Mr. Hercule, horrid urgent. The affair at Birchwood Estate demands your presence. A crime previously thought impossible has occurred. Come at once. If you value the truth, and admire her brow furrowed." This note was addressed directly to Poirot, though. She had never met him and carried an air of both challenge and admiration. It thrust the murder or attempted murder of Henry Fitzwilliam into a broader mystery, one that reached beyond the bounds of the estate. A distant rumble of carriage wheels interrupted her thoughts. All eyes turned toward the driveway, just in time to see a smart, dark green motor car pull up. The chauffeur stepped down and hurried forward, adjusting his cap. From the back seat emerged a small man in immaculate grey tweed, Hercule Poirot. Poirot surveyed the scene with cool, observant eyes. His moustache, waxed to perfect symmetry, gave him an almost theatrical air. He paused to remove his gloves, giving Lady Penelope a courteous nod before speaking in a refined French accent. "Monsieur Carrington, man, troubling news, pray explain." He turned his keen gaze toward the hollow birch log, noting every detail, the way the splintered wood lay open, the crimson stain at its edge, the delicate imprint of a lady's glove in the bark. "A message hidden in wood," he mused, raising a gloved finger. 'Twas interesting. For a long moment, the players stood in silence, Lady Penelope clutching the telegram, Lord Carrington pacing, the doctor frowning in thought, and Poirot himself, whose expression betrayed both intrigue and the promise of methodical pursuit. The forest round them seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the first move in a deadly game of cat and mouse. And so, beneath the ghostly birches, the mystery was born. Who had fired the shot? Why was Henry Fitzwilliam targeted, yet spared? And what did the ominous word vendetta truly portend? With Poirot now at the scene, the stage was set for a battle of wits, for every heart harbored secrets, and for the little grey cells to shine light into the darkest corners of Birchwood Estate. Chapter 2. The first clue. As a crisp stillness settled over Birchwood Estate as Poirot and the assembled party read. And indoors, servants scurried through the grand hallway, their footsteps muted against the thick runner, while the doctor and Lord Carrington led Henry Fitzwilliam into the drawing-room for further treatment. Poirot lingered by the entrance, observing the scene with unwavering attention. His keen eyes first fell upon the hollow birch log resting on a side table, its pale wood cradling the blood-stained billet-marked vendetta. He reached out, lifting the log gingerly by one end and peering along its length. The inner surface bore faint striations, as though something, perhaps a blade, had forced the split. Yet no such weapon had been found at the clearing. This, Poirot noted, was his first incongruity. Lady Penelope, still trembling, approached him. "Monsieur Poirot, this log, it was whole when I passed by earlier this morning. Now it is split, as if opened with intent." "Precisely, madam. A message hidden in wood must be discovered by one with knowledge of this secret, one who knew where to look." Poirot's mustache twitched in satisfaction. "This suggests premeditation. But let us examine further." He turned his attention to the small scrap of paper. The ink appeared fresh, and the word vendetta was written in a shaky hand. Yet the penmanship was surprisingly neat, betraying a practiced hand. Poirot pressed a fingertip against the damp edge. "Notice, madam, that the stain of blood does not obscure the script. The writer ensured legibility, his signature act of theatricality." At that moment, Hastings emerged from the drawing-room. His brow furrowed. Poor it. The doctor has attended to Fitzwilliam's wound, and the man is stabilized. But there's another matter. The gamekeeper's personal effects are missing, Porritt said, raising an eyebrow. Which in particular? Hastings produced a small, leather-bound notebook. His journal, he never parted from it, and his pocket watch. Both are gone. Lady Penelope gasped. But Henry valued those above all else. He would not discard them, indeed. Porritt nodded, his little grey cells whirring. We might have expected his belongings to be scattered, if he fled. Yet, here, nothing, only absence. He glanced round the opulent drawing-room. The sofas and chairs were meticulously arranged. No sign of struggle. On a side table lay a decanter of sherry, nearly full, and to glasses one untouched, one with half its contents drained. Porritt retrieved the glass and inhaled. Remarkable. He mused, the scent of port, not sherry. Someone has poured a false libation to mislead. Lady Penelope frowned. But this is always sherry here. Exactly. A subtle ploy. Our culprit wanted us to believe nothing was disturbed. Now, the drink itself may hold a clue. He handed the glass to the doctor. Examine it for any unusual residue. Meanwhile, Porritt's gaze settled on the hearth, where a single glove lay, its partner conspicuously absent. The glove bore the monogram you see in silver thread. Whose glove might this be? He asked. Lord Carrington rifled through a pocket. My wife's, I believe Eliza Carrington. My sister. She arrived late last night. Eat him. Porritt pocketed the glove. Her absence from this morning's events must be accounted for, yet none recalls seeing her in the forest. Indeed. Lord Carrington agreed. Eliza joined our dinner abruptly and retired early. Unwell, she said. A convenient sickness. Porritt smiled thinly. We shall test the glove for a scent perfume. Perhaps and later question Eliza's precise whereabouts. He moved toward the tall bookcases lining the walls. One shelf held a portfolio of estate maps, another displayed family portraits. He paused before a silver picture frame tilted at an odd angle. Straightening it, he discovered a narrow gap behind, an envelope containing a torn photograph of Henry Fitzwilliam working in the woods, dated a week prior, on the back. Hastily scrawled in the same neat hand, he knows too much. The implication was clear. Fitzwilliam had uncovered some secret, something only a few might have shared. But what, and why had that fact so disturbed the author that they sought vengeance? Porritt replaced the photograph with care. This discovery confirms our suspicions. Vendetta. Yes, but against a secret keeper, not merely a servant. Fitzwilliam was protector of Birchwood's mysteries. He turned to the assembled household. I require precise timelines. Who saw Fitzwilliam last night, and at what hour? A hush fell. One by one, they recounted sightings. Lady Penelope had sent him to collect flowers at dusk. The butler had seen him near the stables at 8:30. Eliza's maid claimed to pass him in the corridor round 10, carrying a missive for Lady Penelope. Yet, paradoxically, no one recalled seeing him after that, and certainly not near the hollow birch. Porritt nodded thoughtfully. There is your second clue. A missing gap. Fitzwilliam's whereabouts between 10 o'clock and dawn remain unaccounted for. Someone seized that window. He beckoned a footman. Fetch the local constable and Mr. Thompson, the estate locksmith. Within the hour, Inspector Mallory and the locksmith arrived. Mallory, stout and methodical, greeted Porritt with respectful deference. I have taken statements, monsieur. No firearm has been registered recently, and no traveller arrived with a weapon. Porritt produced a small, cylindrical object wrapped in cloth, a bullet casing. found lodged at the base of the birch. Observe its diameter small, likely a .32, common enough. But note the rifling marks. This weapon is specialist made, not a common revolver. Mallory bent for a closer look. So the shooter might be someone with resources or professional training. Just so, Porritt pocketed the casing. Consult your records, Inspector, for any recent burglaries or poaching incidents in the county. Our culprit's handiwork might echo elsewhere. To the locksmith, Porritt presented the split lock. Monsieur Thompson, how might one split this without leaving obvious external damage? The locksmith examined the lock carefully. A thin, curved-bladed drawknife could produce such a clean interior split. But to hollow and reseal without visible seam requires skill. Then our saboteur is adept with tools. Porritt smiled. Yet another paradox, a brute act of violence, followed by the finesse of secrecy. As twilight descended, Porritt gathered the household in the oak-paneled library. He placed the glove, the casing, and the photograph on a velvet cloth before them. Friends, we now possess 3 clues: the stage-managed drink, the missing journal and watch, and the silent interval of Fitzwilliam's life. But this night's events cast suspicion on all. He paused. Eyes sweeping the room, I will retire to my quarters to ponder these pieces. Tomorrow, I shall question each of you in depth. Until then, let no one leave the estate, for within these walls, these woods, the truth lies tangled in motive and memory. Lady Penelope trembled as she rose to speak, but Porritt hushed her with a gentle nod. Rest, madam. The little grey cells must be fresh upon the morrow. With that, he offered a curt bow and departed, leaving the household to its anxieties. Outside, the birch trees swayed silently, their pale trunks almost spectral in the fading light, as though guarding the dark secrets 40 feet from the stately manor. Thus concluded the first examination of clues and ray of puzzles to which only Porritt's genius could provide order, and known to all. The shadow of vendetta had already crept into every chamber of Birchwood estate, and as night deepened, another presence watched from the tree line, ensuring that the game had only just begun. Chapter 3. The gathering of suspects' morning light filtered through the tall mullioned windows of Birchwood's oak-panelled library, illuminating dust motes that danced in the still air. Porritt stood by the hearth, inspecting the 3 items laid upon a velvet cloth: the monogrammed glove, the torn photograph, and the gleaming bullet casing round him. The household assembled at his summons, each face drawn and anxious, each pair of eyes striving to appear calm yet betraying the slightest tremor of fear. Lady Penelope Carrington rested a gloved hand on her husband's arm. Her vibrant day dress, once a cheerful shade of primrose yellow, now seemed muted in the gravity of the morning. Lord Carrington himself, normally confident and unflappable, stood rigid, jaw clenched. Behind them, Eliza Carrington, slender and pale, with her auburn hair drawn into a severe chinon, lingered by the portrait of her late mother, a silent testament to family solemnity. To one side, the maid-servant and Thorpe hovered nervously, her cream uniform pristine, but her blue eyes hunted. Nearby, the butler, Mr. Smythe, folded his arms and maintained a calm for Wade, though a thin sheen of sweat on his brow betrayed his unease. Even the local constable, Inspector Murray, shifted uncomfortably, and used to such careful gathering of the privileged elite. Porritt cleared his throat. Mzamas, we are met today not for a social pleasure, but for a search of truth. Each among you witnessed or will claim to have witnessed something relevant to the events of last night and this morning. It is time to present yourselves with candor and precision. He motioned to Lord Carrington. Monsieur, you first observed the shot at dawn. What of your movements and observations prior to discovering Fitzwilliam? Lord Carrington inhaled. I slept poorly, thinking on the upcoming gala. I rose at 5:30 to inspect the grounds. I noticed nothing amiss until the shot. I admit I avoided the stables earlier, for I had a quarrel with Fitzwilliam 2 nights ago over the location of a new game preserve. He glanced at the gamekeeper's empty chair, but that was mere frustration, nothing more. Porritt nodded. An important detail. Mademoiselle Eliza, you arrived late last evening and retired early. Pray tell us where you spent your time between 10 o'clock and midnight. Eliza smoothed her skirt. I was indisposed, as my brother noted. I remained in my chamber, reading by lamplight. My maid delivered tea and biscuits at intervals. I heard nothing except. She hesitated. Only the wind through the trees, and Thorpe stepped forward. I brought the tray. Miss, at 10:30. All was quiet in the corridor. I saw no one near the stairs. Porritt's moustache quivered. No sound of footsteps. No voices. No gunshot. He pressed gently. Doughton shook her head. Nothing. I was most careful. Her gaze flicked toward the hearth, avoiding Porritt's eyes. Very well. Porritt turned to Mr. Smythe. You oversee every entrance. State your account. The butler inclined his head. Last eve. At 9, I performed my usual rounds. All doors were locked by their occupants. I checked again at 11. Still secure. Nothing unusual. At dawn, Lady Penelope called me immediately. He cleared his throat. I confess I removed the logs from this very hearth to stoke the fire, hence the faint ash on the glove found here. Porritt raised the monogrammed glove. A curious confession, monsieur. For Mrs. Carrington's sister would not wear her gloves in the library. Why bring that detail forward? Smythe paled. I wished to be thorough. Porritt allowed a moment of silence to settle, then turned to Anne and you. Young lady, what of the hollow birch logs removal? By whose orders was it brought indoors and swallowed? Lord Carrington saw it fit. I carried it here, but I did not open it. A subtle distinction. Porritt tucked the glove into his breast pocket. Next, the family doctor. Dr. Harrington. The doctor stepped forward. His white coat was spotless, but dark circles under his eyes suggested many sleepless hours. I arrived at 6 this morning and attended Fitzwilliam's wound. I found no sign of self-infliction. The angle of entry suggests the shooter stood here. He indicated a spot just beyond the hearth and fired from a kneeling position. He grimaced. He would have had to practice to hit the temple so precisely. Porritt's eyes gleamed. A professional mock. Perhaps. Now, Lady Penelope, you dispatched Fitzwilliam to collect flowers at dusk. Did you observe him return, lady? Penelope's hand trembled. He brought me a bouquet of wild roses at 6:30. We spoke of the gala arrangements. He seemed distracted, but offered no explanation. She glanced at Eliza. Your illness. Dear sister, did you require these flowers for your room? Eliza bit her lip. No, I sent for lavender, not roses. Porritt's gaze narrowed. A discrepancy. And these roses. Then he tapped the rose sprig left in a vase. Were arranged in the drawing-room. Not your chamber. But perhaps I misplaced them. Lady Penelope interjected defensively. Porritt inclined his head. Possible. But let us continue. Inspector Mary. What of the bullet casing? Mallory consulted his notebook. As you observed, monsieur, we recovered it here. He tapped the hearth. No firearm was found within a 3-mile radius. No witnesses saw a stranger approach. Porritt stroked his mustache. Thus, the assailant was well known or disguised. Now, an item remains unexplained. The missing journal and pocket watch of Fitzwilliam. A hush fell. Porritt's voice grew soft. Henry Fitzwilliam recorded observations of this estate for years in his journal. Secrets of past misdeeds. hidden passages. Blackmail the foundation of many fortunes here. Someone coveted or feared. That knowledge, Lord Carrington's face drained of colour. Blackmail. Henry swore never to reveal family secrets. But blackmail need not be disclosed to all. Poirot counted, only to the victim. The photographer behind this morning's note believed Henry knew too much, and his chin quivered. It's all so awful I never imagined anyone here could wish Henry harm. Yet here we stand. Poirot said gently, "Our circle is closed. The culprit remains among us tomorrow. I shall speak privately with each of you to test these accounts." He stepped back. "For now, examine your own consciences. Did any of you find reason last night to silence knowledge? Did any foresee that vendetta would be the outcome?" Lady Penelope's eyes brimmed with tears. "I did not, I could not," she began, voice trembling. "But you did ask Henry to gather roses at dusk," Poirot observed. "You wanted privacy. Privacy to speak with him about perhaps the estate's old ledger." He paused, allowing the implication to sink in. "They are merely administrative matters." Lord Carrington said sharply, "Nothing to do with murder." "And yet," Poirot replied, "administration can breed resentment." He closed his eyes briefly. "Rest this evening without comfort of certainty. Tomorrow, we continue our inquiry, one by one." The household dispersed and fled to the servant quarters. Smythe retreated to polish silverware, and the Carringtons withdrew to their chambers, Inspector Marylingwood behind Poirot, clearing his throat. "Monsieur, your methods are unorthodox, but compelling," Poirot smiled. "Merci, Inspector. The little grey cells must be cultivated, not forced." He gathered the 3 clues and slipped them into his coat. "I shall retire now and reflect upon the tapestry of motive. Each thread must be carefully examined before I can reveal the pattern." As the library door closed, a sudden draught flickered the candle flames. Outside, the birch branches rustled, as though whispering secrets to one another. The gathering of suspects had concluded, but the web of suspicion was only beginning to ensnare them all. In that hush, Poirot sensed the true game had been set, and only he could unmask the player hidden in plain sight. Chapter 4. Poirot Arrives's grand hall of Birchwood Manor was suffused with a hushed expectancy. When Hercule Poirot descended the marble staircase, his polished shoes making the faintest echo on the stone steps, Lord and Lady Carrington stood near the central column, their faces a study in anxiety and relief. Dr. Harrington hovered close by, stethoscope dangling, while Hastings remained a respectful pace behind Poirot, notebook in hand. Inspector Marylingwood beside the tall windows, arms folded, curious eyes fixed on the little man in tweed. Poirot paused at the foot of the staircase, his gaze sweeping the assembled group. He placed one gloved hand on his chest and inclined his head in courteous greeting. "Msamus, I thank you for your patience. I trust the morning's events have caused some inconvenience." His French accent carried a note of gentle amusement, as though the very notion of inconvenience amused him. Lady Penelope curtsied delicately. "Monsieur Poirot, we are honoured by your presence. Pray forgive our distress. Madam, distress is the companion of mystery," Poirot replied, glancing upward as if noticing the high frescoed ceiling for the first time. "It is only when one knows to observe that ambiguity yields to illumination." He tapped the lapel of his coat. "But let us dispense with pleasantries. I have examined the initial clues, and they speak volumes. I propose we begin with an inspection of the crime scene itself." With that, he led the small party through the oak doors into the morning light. The forest air, still tinged with dew, greeted them as they emerged onto the lawn. Hastings followed closely, noting the intense focus etched on Poirot's faces. He strode toward the hollow birch clearing. Along the way, Porritt paused to inspect footprints in the soft earth small, rounded impressions that betrayed a boot, not a shoe. He knelt, running a finger along the edge of the print. Observe, Hastings, the arch is high, the maker perhaps Italian, given the maker's mark on the sole. He held out his small notebook and sketched the print with meticulous care. This indicates our assailant is both particular in appearance and mindful of detail. They reached the hollow birch log. Its pail would now set upon a velvet cushion for closer scrutiny. Porritt stood, adjusting his bow tie. The log itself noticed the seam. A draw knife, yes, but applied with great skill. One does not cut and rejoin so seamlessly without practice. He tapped the wood surface. Only a carpenter or someone habituated to fine handiwork could achieve this concealment. Hastings glanced at the fallen leaves. Porritt, you seem to find artistry even in violence. Porritt smiled. Mon cher Hastings, the human heart is always divided between brute strength and refined intellect. The mirror sought both power and precision. He brushed aside a strand of hair. Now, onto the bullet casing. He stooped beside the hearth. A metal stand had been placed near the log to simulate the angle of fire and picked up th. E.3 to casing. Note the rifling. Marks. They are deep and cut with consistency. A custom-made barrel, not factory standard. Our shooter had access to a specialized firearm, likely for sporting purposes. He examined the casing's patina, and the slight tarnish suggests this weapon saw use in damp conditions. A chance for a Dr. Harrington. What effect does moisture have on brass? The doctor leaned forward. It accelerates oxidation, producing a greenish patina. But here it is only lightly tarnished, perhaps used once in the rain, or stored improperly. Precisely, Porritt said. Another clue to our muck. He slipped the casing into a pocket. He then beckoned them further into the woods, toward the path leading back to the stables. We must consider ingress and egress. Our assailant could not travel far on foot without being noticed. There is the lantern light seen by the maid at 10:30, and yet no one reported a visitor. Therefore, the culprit was resident or concealed. At the stables, a row of saddled horses awaited inspection. Porritt walked between them, tilting his head as he examined each bridle. He paused at one saddle with a fine leather holster affixed. Countless rub marks here. A revolver often drawn. He tested the holster's grip. This horse was prepared for flight. Was the shooter intending immediate escape? Inspector Malley frowned. No horse left the estate last night. No. Porritt agreed. Someone planned flight but did not execute it. A wise decision. Perhaps, in a crime of vengeance. He moved on, tracing hoof prints that led to the edge of the paddock. Notice how the prints blur. His horse was startled. A sudden shake of the animal. Likely as the shot rang. But these prints then vanish among others. See here. He knelt and scraped away a layer of leaves, revealing a second. Distinct print of a woman's boot. A second presence our plot thickens. He rose, turning to face the gathered crowd. We have 2 participants. One professional. One perhaps less so. One planted the message in wood. The other assisted or observed. He smiled to Anne. Thorpe. Mademoiselle, you claimed to carry the log indoors. Did you touch it before now? And clasped her hands. Only when Lord Carrington asked me to, sir. And the glove found nearby came from this log. Porritt held the easy monogrammed glove aloft, recorded under my friend's mother's care. This item suggests the involvement of Eliza Carrington. Mademoiselle, is it your glove? Eliza flushed. Yes, but it was left behind when I retired. I meant to retrieve it later. Porritt inclined his head. Understandable. Yet why did the glove appear here? Unless to implicate you, is staged evidence. The author of Vendetta wished to divert suspicion. He retraced his steps toward the log, turning to Lord Carrington. Monsieur, tell me of the relationship between your sister and the gamekeeper. Lord Carrington swallowed. They were acquainted. Eliza and Henry conversed on matters of estate business, but neither implied anything untoward. Perhaps not, Porritt replied. Yet friendship and secrecy often walk hand in hand. Now, I wish to examine the Carrington papers in the oak study. Come. Hastings. As Hastings gathered his notebook, Porritt addressed Inspector Mowry. Please secure the scene until my inquiries conclude. We must not disturb any further prints or artifacts back in the oak study. Porritt rifled through desk drawers with Smyther's reluctant assistance, extracting letters, deeds, and financial ledgers. He paged through them expeditiously, attention flitting from one item to another. Hastings watched, pen poised. Lady Penelope hovered at the door's arch, wringing her hands taut at last. Porritt halted and selected a worn, leather-bound letter. He opened to an entry dated just 2 nights earlier, an account of confidential payments to Henry Fitzwilliam, labeled estate security. Next to it, a cryptic notation, report to EC only. He tapped the initials, EC, the same as on the glove. Eliza Carrington. A chill passed through the room. Eliza's composure faltered. It was my responsibility, monsieur. I engaged Henry to protect family heirlooms. Nothing more. Porritt regarded her with gentle severity. Yet, hidden payments, secrecy, and a sudden vendetta suggest deeper undercurrents. Madam, did these payments concern the ledger only, or something else, perhaps the contents of a certain hollow birch log? Her eyes widened. I knew nothing of such notes. Then your ignorance requires scrutiny. Porritt closed the ledger and smoothed the pages. We have uncovered the first steps of misdirection, staged evidence, selective clues, concealed alliances. He turned to Hastings, mon ami. Record these observations tomorrow. I question suspects individually. For now, we have discovered that this vendetta is personal, targeted at Fitzwilliam's knowledge of secrets between Eliza and himself, and possibly at the deeper enmity within this family. You rejoined Lady Penelope and Lord Carrington in the library, placing the ledger on the table. Madam, monsieur, we must guard against rash judgments. The truth is concealed. But we inch closer with each piece of evidence. Outside, the forest rustled as a breeze stirred among the birch leaves. Inside, Porritt's rival had transformed the household sphere into tight-lipped tension. As dusk approached, all awaited the revelations that tomorrow's interviews would bring, and the little grey cells that would, in time, disentangle the web of lies round Birchwood Estate. Chapter 5. Initial interviews beginning. Dawn broke over Birchwood Estate as the household assembled once more in the oak-panelled library. The scent of freshly brewed tea mingled with the lingering aroma of burning logs, creating an atmosphere at once warm and tense. Porritt sat behind a small writing desk, his notebook open before him. Hastings stood nearby, ready with pen and ink, while Inspector Mowry took station beside the hearth. One by one, the suspects were ushered in, beginning the day's inquiry. Lady Penelope Carrington entered first, her cheeks flushed from the morning chill. She curtsied politely. Smoothing the skirt of her primrose dress, Porritt rose with exaggerated courtesy. Madam, I thank you for joining me. How did you pass the night following our unfortunate events? Lady Penelope inhaled deeply. I found little rest, monsieur. I lay awake pondering Henry's condition and these revelations concerning Eliza. The ledger, it startled me. She paused, eyes downcast. I confess, I did not sleep until well past 2. Troubled by uncertainties, Poirot nodded, uneasy. Conscience often robs one of sleep. I wish to revisit your conversation with Fitzwilliam at 6:30 yesterday evening. You recall his demeanour. Yes, he was distant, preoccupied, she said softly. He handed me the bouquet, but his eyes, they darted to the forest as though expecting someone. She shivered. I thought him merely fatigued. Poirot steepled his fingers. And did you inquire further? Did you ask what vexed him? Lady Penelope bit her lip. No, I feared to pry without cause. Only later did I realize his unease may have signified danger. 'Twas been. Your restraint is noted. Poirot tapped his notebook. One final question. Did any sound disturb you that night? A footstep? A door? A whisper? Lady Penelope closed her eyes. I heard nothing beyond the wind. I kept my door locked. She hesitated. Yet, when I rose at first light, I sensed an intruder's presence in the hall, an almost imperceptible scent of cigar smoke. Poirot's mustache twitched. Cigar smoke. You say, thank you, madam. He glanced to Hastings. Note, possible intruder in corridor. Lady Penelope curtsied and departed. Next, Eliza Carrington entered, composed but with a hint of apprehension. Her auburn hair glinted in the morning sun. She gave Poirot a curt nod. He motioned to a small velvet stool. Mademoiselle, I appreciate your cooperation. Let us discuss your nocturnal activities. Eliza settled herself. As I stated, I was unwell and remained in my chamber, and visited with tea at intervals. She forced a calm smile. At midnight, I read letters from friends in London. Your letters, Poirot said, raising an eyebrow. May I see them? Eliza paled. I prefer privacy, monsieur. They are personal, of course, Poirot replied gently. Yet these letters may show whether you expected company or correspondence of significance. After a moment's consideration, Eliza produced 2 envelopes bearing London postmarks. One was unopened. The other held a note expressing regret at missing a social engagement. No mention of Birchwood or Henry. She said. Poirot examined the open note. Quite so, but the unopened one wire remained sealed. Eliza's lip quivered. I had not yet found courage to reply. Very well. Poirot made a note. Finally, the ledger payments marked DC. Did you expect any misunderstanding with Fitzwilliam regarding these funds? Eliza's shoulders stiffened. No, I trusted him implicitly. Those payments were for estate maintenance alone. Yet he kept a journal, noting secrets beyond maintenance. Poirot's gaze was steady. Did you ever fear he might reveal matters you wished to keep hidden? Eliza hesitated. I feared gossip, but not harm. She rose. I have said all I can. She curtsied and left Dot and Thorpe. The maid was next. She approached in nervous steps, her eyes wide. Poirot gestured to a chair. Mademoiselle Thorpe, you observed the log's removal and carried it here. Did you notice anything unusual when you handled it? And clasped her hands. Only the weight. It was heavier than wood should be. She glanced down. I thought it odd, but I did not inspect its interior. Did you see the scrap of paper before Monsieur Carrington retrieved it? She swallowed. No, sir. I saw the log on the veranda and thought it a message for a Lady Penelope. Her voice quavered. Then I carried it directly here. Poirot cocked his head. And you smelled nothing unusual. No scent of gunpowder. No trace of perfume or tobacco. And shook her head. Nothing but morning air. 'Twas been. Poirot paused. One final question. Did you ever see Henry alone after midnight? Anne's face drained of colour. I thought I saw his lantern light near the stables at about 1:20. But I dismissed it, figured he patrolled as usual. She exhaled shakily. "I did not tell anyone because I thought it unimportant." Poirot smiled gently. "Your candor is admirable. Merci. Mademoiselle," and hurried out. Dr. Harrington arrived next. His professional composure in place, Poirot asked him to recount his medical findings. The doctor repeated that Fitzwilliam's wound was not fatal, but emphasized the precision of the shot. Poirot pressed. Would someone untrained produce such a clean graze? The doctor considered. Unlikely. The angle was deliberate, perhaps, intended to intimidate rather than kill. That aligns with the word vendetta. Poirot jotted a note. And the tarnish on the casing one used in damp conditions? Indeed. Dr. Harrington affirmed. He might have fired in rain or stored the weapon in a moist place. Thank you, Doctor. Your expertise provides a clearer picture. The doctor nodded and withdrew. Lastly, Mr. Smythe, the butler, entered. Poirot eyed him thoughtfully. Monsieur Smythe, you handled the letter and ranged the library fire. Tell me, why did you admit the glove's ash residue? Smythe cleared his throat. I thought it relevant. I wished to help. Poirot tapped his notebook. Yet you did not mention a second glove. Missing. Perhaps to implicate Eliza. Smythe's eyes flickered. I discovered the glove by the hearth at dawn. I did not search further. Did you send the cigar smoke Lady Penelope reported? He hesitated. Yes, faintly. I believed a guest had returned late. Poirot nodded. Monsieur. Did you notice any other intruder scent? Perfume, for instance, Smythe's. Gaze dropped. No, only the cigar. Poirot smiled. Thank you. Your diligence is appreciated. Smythe bowed and departed. With the interviews complete, Poirot dismissed Hastings and Inspector Murray. He remained alone in the library, the morning sun casting long shadows across the floor. He rose and paced slowly, revisiting the clues in his mind. A professional shot intended to wound. An amateur accomplice, a ledger of secret payments, scents, of cigar and unseen perfume, each detail wove into a tapestry of motive. He paused before the fireplace, where the glove awaited. Vendetta is no mere whim. He murmured, it is a calculated response. But whose and to what betrayal? His reflection in the polished surface of the piano caught his eye, marked by intense concentration. Tomorrow, the game continues. The little grey cells grew restless. He collected his notebook and exited into the corridor, where the hush of early day permeated the walls. Outside, the birch trees swayed gently, as though urging him onward. Within him, the mystery deepened, and Poirot sensed the first threads of resolution yet to be teased apart. Chapter 6. First fall sleep. Late morning sunlight filtered through the mullioned windows as the household gathered once again in the oak-lined library. A hush fell when Inspector Malley rose to announce his findings. In the silence, every heartbeat seemed magnified. Even the crackle of the fire in the hearth sounded intrusive, as though the room itself was straining to listen. The inspector cleared his throat. Monsieur Poirot, I have completed a preliminary search of the premises in Eliza Carrington's boudoir. We discovered a small, antique revolver hidden beneath the cedar lining of her jewelry box. The weapon matches the .3 to casing recovered at the hollow birch log. He paused, eyes sweeping the room. Moreover, traces of La Rose Antico perfume were detected on the casing, perfume known to be your sister's favorite, Lady Eliza. A collective gasp rose from the assembled Carringtons. Eliza's face drained of color. Lady Penelope clutched her husband's arm. Hastings shifted uncomfortably, pen forgotten in his hand. For a moment, no one spoke. Eliza's voice trembled. I do not know how it came there. That revolver belonged to father. He kept it for sporting. I must have handled it when selecting an evening accessory. But the glove monogram EC was found at the scene, and now this, Mallory said, laying the revolver on the velvet cloth beside the casing and glove. These are damning coincidences. Lady Penelope rose. You see, Purrit, it was Eliza all along. Lord Carrington looked from his wife to his sister. Eliza, why, what grievance could you have against Henry? His voice cracked. Eliza's composure broke. Tears welled in her eyes. I loved Henry like a brother. We planned nothing. I did hide the revolver after I borrowed it to fire a salute at the gala rehearsal last week. Father insisted on a demonstration. I forgot to return it. Purrit steepled his fingers, watching how closely. You fired a salute. You say, alone. In the garden. Yes, at dusk. When no one watched, Eliza whispered. I never bore him ill will. Inspector Mallory turned. To Purrit. The evidence is clear. Glove. Weapon. Perfume. Shall I arrest her? The detective's small frame stiffened. He raised a gloved hand. Patience, Inspector. We must not mistake correlation for proof. He walked slowly to the table. Examining the revolver's grip. Observe. The grip bears scuff marks inconsistent with one of Petite hand's. The revolver appears too large for the delicate grasp of Lady Eliza. He then lifted the casing. And scent. Mademoiselle's perfume may have been transferred by someone handling her glove or by planting. The true culprit is adept at misdirection. Inspector Mallory frowned. But surely this is our culprit. Purrit tapped the casing. Let us consider motive. Did Eliza suffer any slight by Fitzwilliam? On the contrary, she entrusted him with confidential payments. He turned to Lord Carrington. And you, monsieur, had that argument with Henry regarding the new preserve. Jealousy can ferment into vengeance. Lord Carrington stiffened. Purrit continued. Furthermore, examine the bullet. It bears rifling marks only a specialist barrel could produce, yet the revolver we hold is a common sporting model factory standard. It could not have fired that precise graze. Therefore, the weapon in Eliza's box is a red herring. A murmur rippled through the room. Lady Penelope's eyes widened. But why hide it? If not to protect it. Purrit looked gently at Eliza. You said father taught you to fire a salute. You handled the weapon innocently. Yet the real assailant seized this opportunity. Knowing your access and your perfume would provide an ideal distraction, he turned warily to Inspector Mallory. Resting Lady Eliza now would be a grave mistake. We must instead identify who set the stage. I believe our culprit is someone intimately familiar with the Carringtons' routines. Capable of forging, motive and planting evidence, and Thorpe, who had stood pale and trembling by the door, spoke up. Monsieur, I saw Mr. Smythe polishing a revolver yesterday afternoon. He told me it was from my inspection, but he seemed nervous. Smythe's face turned ashen. I only offered it for inspection because Lady Eliza asked to show me how to care for a keepsake. Purrit raised a hand. Enough. What matters now is that the inspector withdraw his suggestion of. First, he turned back to Mallory. We pursue the real artist of misdirection. We must search for a weapon matching the rifling marks. That weapon is likely hidden somewhere on the premises. Awaiting discovery, Mallory nodded slowly. Very well. Monsieur, I will delay any formal charges. Eliza sank into a nearby armchair, trembling but relieved. Lady Penelope rushed to her side, embracing her. Oh, Eliza, I never doubted you. Lord Carrington placed a hand on Purrit's shoulder. You have saved my sister from an injustice. Purrit inclined his head. Alan's, this is but the opening act of deception. We have much ground to cover. I suggest we inspect Mr. Smythe's quarters next if indeed he polished a revolver yesterday. Smythe wiped his brow. Of course, monsieur. Whatever you wish, as the household stirred. Into activity once more, Hastings followed Poirot into the corridor. Mon ami, you cleared Eliza brilliantly. Yet how did you know the sporting revolver was an odd match? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Hastings, observe how the speech of suspects reveals their truth. Eliza's soft protestations bespoke innocence, but the weapon's dimensions told another tale. Now, we must find the true implement and its owner. Outside, the birch grove lay silent under the midday sun, its trees standing sentinel over the unfolding drama. Within Birchwood Manor, the first false sled had been exposed, leaving a deeper mystery and a more dangerous adversary lurking. In the shadows, poised between accusation and absolution, the household awaited the next revelation, unaware of how swiftly the hunter would become hunted. Chapter 7. The psychological Gamley afternoon found Birchwood Manor's drawing room, transformed into a stage for a subtle confrontation. Poirot, having requisitioned all principal players under the pretense of a casual gathering, ranged chairs in a semicircle facing a hearth. The heavy velvet drapes were drawn, and the only illumination came from the flickering firelight end. A solitary lamp on the central table. A quiet tension hummed in the air as Lord and Lady Carrington, Eliza, and Thorpe, Mr. Smythe, Dr. Harrington, and Inspector Mallory took their seats, each casting furtive glances at Poirot Dot in the center. Poirot stood, hands clasped behind his back, mustache perfectly waxed. Hastings lingered by the doorway, notebook closed, ready to record but instructed to remain silent. Poirot's voice, measured and calm, broke the silence. Zamas. Tonight we engage in what I call the psychological game. We shall observe not only what is said, but what is left unspoken, and how each of you reacts to what you believe you know. He gestured to the table, upon which rested three objects: the hollow birch log, the torn photograph, and the ledger page marked DC. Poirot began by lifting the photograph. This image shows M. Fitzwilliam in your company, Eliza, he said, handing it to her. You will recall, Mademoiselle, what you told me, that your dealings were purely professional. Yet this photograph was taken secretly, suggesting you wished the encounter hidden. Eliza's fingers trembled as she accepted the photograph. Her lips parted, then closed. She set it back on the table without meeting Poirot's eyes. I asked him to document where new game paths could be laid. Nothing secretive. Her voice was clipped, defensive. Poirot bowed his head. 'Twas been. He turned to Lord Carrington. Yet you seem displeased with Fitzwilliam's recommendations. Monsieur, you argued over the land's boundaries. Lord Carrington shifted in his seat, jaw tight. A disagreement, yes, but hardly motive for violence. Nevertheless, Poirot continued, you have motive to resent a man who challenged your authority. Notice how the slightest reminder unsettles you. He watched Carrington's clenched fist slowly relax, then tighten again. Next, Poirot addressed Thorpe. You saw a lantern by the stables at 1:20. He had withheld that information until prompted. He leaned forward. Why did you not speak sooner? Mademoiselle, fear of reprisal, desire to protect someone, and cheeks flushed. She looked to Smythe as if for reassurance. I thought it irrelevant, she stammered. Poirot's grey eyes assessed her. Ivory tower or common sense? We shall see. He then picked up the ledger page. These payments to Fitzwilliam, initialed E.C. Eliza. You claim purely administrative. Yet the ledger entry is marked confidential, accessible only to you. How uninterested of you to mark it plainly, unless secrecy itself were part of the plan. Eliza's throat bobbed. She pressed lips together without reply. Poirot paused, pacing slowly before them. Now, I wish to probe deeper. Observe how each of you reacts when presented with controlled half-truths. He turned to Dr. Harrington. Doctor, you found the wound improbable for the weapon discovered in Eliza's boudoir. You said it must be a specialist's barrel. He produced a close-up photograph of rifling marks, holding it for all to see. Imagine my surprise when I learned that our local gunsmith, Mr. Thompson, had recently crafted a custom barrel for a client. The doctor's eyebrows rose. A client known to frequent this estate and to have argued with Fitzwilliam. Dr. Harrington frowned, glancing at Smythe. I was unaware. Poirot's lips curved. But now you are. Tell us, Doctor, why would our butler need a custom barrel? Smythe's chair squeaked as he shifted. His calm forehead cracked. I requested it for Lord Carrington's sporting trophy. He swallowed at his behest. His voice trembled. He desired practice, that is all. Lord Carrington's face paled. I never. He cut himself off, staring at Smythe. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. Ah. But motives need not be spoken aloud. We watched the exchange of glances, the tightening of throats. Now, Lady Penelope, you reported the scent of cigar smoke in your corridor, yet your husband denies smoking. Whose cigar, madam? Lady Penelope's hand flew to her throat. She inhaled deeply, as though testing her own memory. I cannot say. Poirot inclined his head. Perhaps an illicit visitor, someone breathing heavily in the night, fearful of discovery. She shivered. For the first time, Eliza let slip a gasp. She grasped the armrests. Poirot seized the moment. A guest, perhaps. But our guest fired the shot. He then addressed Inspector Mallory. Inspector, you considered arresting Eliza, yet withdrew. You remain uncertain. Tell me, does your uncertainty trouble you? Mallory straightened his coat. It does, monsieur. Evidence is muddled. Poirot smiled. Precisely. That is the nature of misdirection. Moments of taut silence passed. Then Poirot set his hands on the table. We now play another round. He drew from his pocket a small, sealed envelope and placed it before Anne. Inside this envelope is one of your father's letters. Mademoiselle, you claim to fear gossip. Yes, Anne's breath caught. She looked at the envelope, then back at Poirot. This letter, how did you obtain it? Your mother entrusted it to me. Poirot replied gently. Trust, when given, can be tested. Will you admit its contents might concern you more deeply than you allowed? And swallowed. Tears welled in her eyes. It speaks of debts and secrets beyond this estate. She covered her face. I did not wish the family to know. Poirot's expression softened. You see, mademoiselle, we all conceal that which we fear, and in our fear, we become susceptible to suggestion. He laid his hand over hers. Fear of exposure makes one vulnerable to manipulation. At this, Smythe paled further. Lady Penelope's eyes brimmed with pity. Even Lord Carrington seemed to soften. Poirot observed each reaction in turn. Now you understand why the true architect of vendetta sought to sow mistrust among you. By touching your vulnerabilities, the culprit hoped to turn you against one another. He rose, stepping back. The psychological game has begun. Each of you has shown cracks in your composure. We shall see which fissure leads to the heart of truth. He fixed his gaze on Eliza. Tomorrow, mademoiselle, I shall return to your thoughts. Until then, consider how easily shadows can masquerade as realities without another word. Poirot turned and swept from the room, leaving the group in stunned silence. Hastings followed, pausing at the door to record a single phrase. Psychological misdirection confirmed. Motives layered, vulnerabilities exposed. Then he bowed out, and the light dimmed as the drapes were drawn once more. Within the silent drawing-room, the embers of suspicion glowed faintly in every face, and the fragile alliances between them trembled on the brink of collapse outside. The birch trees whispered in the gathering dusk. as though eager spectators to the drama unfolding within. The true game was now afoot, and each suspect would soon discover that to reveal the truth, one must first confront the depths of one's own heart. Chapter 8. A secondary mystery night had barely fallen when a shrill cry echoed through the corridors of Birchwood Manor. It came from the gallery on the second floor, where ancestral portraits surveyed the chamber with impassive eyes. Anne Thorpe, the young maid, stood trembling before the portrait of Lady Carrington's great-grandmother, clutching a silver tray that had once held evening tea. Her face was pale as ivory. "Madame, monsieur," she gasped, voice quivering. "The ceremonial sword its scabbard has vanished from the display." Within moments, footsteps clattered as Lord and Lady Carrington, Porritt, Hastings, Inspector Mallory, and several servants hurried into the gallery. The long case held the Carrington family's heirloom, a beautifully wrought ceremonial sword, its scabbard etched with the family crest. Gleaming beneath the glass case, tonight, the sword lay bare, its blade gleaming, but its scabbard absent. Lady Penelope laid a trembling hand on her husband's arm. "It was here just this afternoon," she whispered. "I passed by only hours ago." Porritt's eyes narrowed. He approached the empty mount, inspecting the mounting brackets. "Observe," he said softly. "There is no sign of forced entry." The glass case opened as smoothly as last afternoon, when Mr. Smythe polished it. But this evening, someone extracted the scabbard with precision. Inspector Mallory knelt to examine the floor. No footprints, no scrap of cloth, only this. He held up a single white glove, matching the monogrammed gloves of earlier days, but unmarked, found by the library door. Porritt took the glove and turned it slowly in his hand. A calling card or a taunt. He studied the gloves. Pristine surface, no stain, no wear, fresh from the cupboard. He tucked it into his pocket. Our saboteur grows bolder. Hastings moved to the glass case. "But why steal only the scabbard? The blade is the prize, because the scabbard conceals more than mere metal," Porritt replied. "Family tradition holds that the scabbard contains hidden documents, sealed letters from the estates. Founder, those letters reveal the true lineage of the Carringtons and list assets bequeathed beyond the family." Lord Carrington's face drained of colour. "The trust deed, my father insisted it be stored within the scabbard. Only the head of the family may read it. A more disturbing breach. Then," Porritt said, "someone wishes not only to unsettle the household, but to unearth secrets that could upend inheritances and reputations." Lady Penelope pressed a hand to her throat. "Who among us would seek such upheaval?" Porritt surveyed the group. Eliza stood apart, her auburn hair catching the lamplight. Dr. Harrington's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Mr. Smythe's polished composure slipped into concern. And shivered. Even Inspector Mallory frowned, as though he anticipated more complexity. Porritt bent to retrieve the scabbard mount. "Note the impression here," he murmured. A slender hand, perhaps female, reached round to lift the scabbard. Yet the glove found below is too large, more masculine. Hastings frowned. "A deliberate misdirection, undoubtedly," Porritt agreed. "Consider the weapon used earlier, the message vendetta. And now theft of documents, each act escalates. The stakes, our culprit desires chaos." He stood and addressed Mallory. "Secure the doors. No one leaves. Then to the household. Gather in the library at once. We shall examine every suspect in light of this new offense." Within minutes, despair and suspicion filled the library's hushed air. Porritt ranged the group in a loose circle. As he had in the psychological game, Mzamas, we now face a second mystery layered upon the first. The theft of the scabbard and the disappearance of its contents suggest a supplementary motive. Let us consider who benefits. He turned to Lord Carrington. "Monsieur, These letters would validate your claim as sole heir, yet should they reveal branch allocations, your position would weaken. Would the Master of Birchwood risk loss by revealing the letters? Lord Carrington's jaw tightened. I would guard those letters with my life, but I would not steal them from my own home, precisely. Purrit said, "Now, Mademoiselle Eliza, you stand to gain nothing from confirmation of your own lineage unless you feared exposure of debts or secrets sealed within." He watched her closely. Her fingers tightened round her skirt. "Eliza is innocent," Lady Penelope interjected, but her voice wavered. "Perhaps," Purrit allowed, "yet fear of exposure can drive a person to desperate measures." He turned to Smythe. "You polished that case, monsieur. You know its lock and mechanism. If one wished access, you could provide it." Smythe's face went pale. "I would never—" Purrit raised a finger. "Only a hypothesis. But consider also Dr. Harrington, who frequently tended to estate business. You often visited the safe. Backing up ledger records, you had opportunity." The doctor's expression hardened. "I care for lives, not for family secrets." Thorpe's shoulders shook. "I only carried messages. I never handled the case. Yet you knew of the letter's existence," Purrit said softly. "Your father's correspondence speaking of debts, and you feared discovery. Perhaps you sought leverage, and pressed her hand to her heart, licking her lips. No, I sought only to protect my family's dignity." Purrit observed the rising tension. "We shall test these alibis. But first, I must inspect the study." He motioned to Inspector Mallory. "Retrieve the case from Mr. Smythe. We observe the lock." Mallory produced the glass case. Purrit examined the lock carefully, then produced a small key from his coat. "This key bears a crest matching the Carrington arms, yet it is not the estate master key. Who among you gifted this to the inspector?" No one answered. Purrit smiled thinly. "I believe our thief possessed this key. Yet only a limited few would have such an item." He pocketed the key. "Now, let us consider the timeline. The scabbard vanished between dusk and now over 4 hours. Who remained unaccounted for during that period?" He surveyed the faces, noting each reaction. Lord Carrington's tightened jaw, Lady Penelope's quivering lip, Eliza's pale resolve, Smythe's sweating brow, Dr. Harrington's controlled gaze. Anne's wide eyes. "We must reconstruct your positions, one by one." Purrit began to question each individually, cross-referencing stories told earlier that day, the library rounds, the dinner seating, the maintenance of horses in the stables. As he worked through their accounts, he jotted notes, watching micro-expressions, measuring silences, and noting hesitations dot by the time he concluded. The candles were guttering low. He rose. Holding his notes, "The theft of the scabbard is not an isolated act of theft, but a calculated step in a plan of revenge and revelation. We have narrowed the window of opportunity, identified a master key, and observed deliberate misdirections: female glove, misplaced revolver, staged vendetta." He glanced up. "Eyes alight tomorrow. I shall reveal what each of these signifies. For now, consider that the secondary mystery is but a mirror of the original. Someone wishes to punish Fitzwilliam and then to threaten the very foundation of this family's legacy. The question remains, who among you harbors both the skill and the motive to execute such a plan?" Silence reigned as the household exchanged uneasy glances outside. The birch trees seemed to lean closer, their pale trunks faintly visible through the drawing-room windows. Within Birchwood Manor, two crimes now lay entwined, and Purrit's little grey cells raced to disentangle them before trust itself unravelled into ruin. Chapter 9. Hidden connections. Following morning dawned grey and drizzly, the sky over Birchwood estate cloaked in low-hanging clouds that seemed to mirror the heavy suspicion lodged within its walls. Porrid convened the household once more in the oak-panelled library. But the light-hearted camaraderie of the gala preparations had been supplanted. By wary stares and hushed conversation, every face bore traces of last night's revelations, and even the servants moved with furtive glances. Porrid rose from his chair before the smouldering hearth. Folding his hands behind his back, Msamus, we stand at a crossroads. To crimes the wounding of Henry Fitzwilliam and the disappearance of the Carrington scabbard must be reconciled into a single narrative. To do so, we examine not only individual motives, but the connections that bind you together. He turned first to Lady Penelope, who sat beside her husband, twisting a handkerchief in her lap. "Madam, you have expressed fear that your family's reputation might suffer should those sealed letters be revealed. Yet you instructed Fitzwilliam to retrieve wild roses flowers associated with secrecy in Victorian symbolism. Why that particular choice?" Lady Penelope's eyes widened. She drew in a breath, her voice steady but low. "Roses, yes, but not for secrecy. I sent him for lavender from my room, to calm my nerves. Those wild roses, I thought them lovely, but they were not what I requested." She hesitated. Only later did I notice the discrepancy. Porrid inclined his head. An innocent mistake, perhaps, but one that created an unexpected clue. "Now, Lord Carrington, you instructed Mr. Smythe to polish the glass case and arranged a late-night inspection. Was that purely routine?" Lord Carrington's brow furrowed. He glanced at Smythe, then back at Porrid. "Routine. Yes, the gala's decorations include many heirlooms. I wished everything to shine." He swallowed. "I did not anticipate." His voice trailed off. "Yet you knew the scabbard contained sensitive documents," Porrid interjected. "The shine can also blind." He turned to Smythe. "Monsieur, you polished the case and thus knew of its lock. You had access to the master key. You also reported a missing syringe for the horses last night. Did you retrieve it?" Smythe swallowed hard, straightening his coat. "I borrowed it to calm a skittish mare in the stables. I returned it. Immediately never thought it relevant. Yet Porrid pressed. You did not mention the mare's name initially, nor did anyone else note its condition, a detail easily overlooked. But vigilant eyes detect such omissions." He paused, allowing the room to settle into silence, before directing his attention to Dr. Harrington. "Doctor, you treated Fitzwilliam's wound and commented on its professional precision. You also visited the stable infirmary at midnight ostensibly to tend another horse, yet you had reason to review the ledger records stored there. Did you not?" Dr. Harrington's jaw tensed. "I treat animals and people. I had no interest in financial documents." Porrid smiled gently. "Of course, but the ledger page marked EC was found among your notes. Why did you photograph it?" The doctor exhaled sharply. "I took it only to clarify a medical expense. That page was misfiled." "Misfiled? Yes, but important." Porrid moved on to him. "Mademoiselle Thorpe, you warned us that Fitzwilliam patrolled late. Yet you withheld that from Inspector Malley initially. Why?" Anne's chin quivered. "I feared it was imprudent, that I might implicate myself." "Implicate yourself?" Porrid echoed. "Indeed. For you were entrusted with delivering messages between Eliza and Fitzwilliam. You knew of their confidential meetings, and face paled. They spoke of estate security. I did not wish to breach confidences, yes. But secrets can be dangerous." He folded his fingers. "Now, Eliza Carrington, your payments to Fitzwilliam and the ledger's confidentiality suggest a partnership. But your own financial troubles could be eased by exposing alternative heirs. Could they not?" Eliza straightened, her voice firm. "I loved my brother dearly. I sought only to secure the estate for the gala. If exposing other heirs were my aim, I would have taken those letters myself. Porrett's gaze remained steady. Yet the missing scabbard implicates one who knows the estate's hidden compartments. The hollow birch log served as the initial vessel for a vendetta. That log was pruned from the forest by a gamekeeper and pruned again by the murderer. Only someone with knowledge of that secret path could lay such a trap. All eyes turned to Lord Carrington. He shifted uncomfortably. I have walked those woods with Henry. We mapped thinning areas together. Precisely. Porrett nodded. A shared knowledge. But there is more. Lady Penelope, you claimed the scent of cigar. Smoke in the corridor. Yet you do not smoke. A guest visited you and you wished to hide. Lady Penelope lowered her eyes. A friend of my husband's from London called unexpectedly. He remained only moments. Hastings, standing by the fireplace, cleared his throat. That friend is Mr. Crawford, the London solicitor. He arrived yesterday with legal papers, some bearing sensitive annotations. Porrett smiled at Hastings, then addressed the group. Mr. Crawford brought a codicil affecting the Carrington will. That codicil mentions Fitzwilliam as trustee of certain assets. If someone wished to usurp that role, eliminating Fitzwilliam or discrediting him would benefit their scheme. He paused, stepping closer to the hearth. Consider, too, the torn photograph found behind the portraits Fitzwilliam and Eliza. That photograph was taken by Crawford's assistant, unbeknownst to you, Lady Penelope. She gasped softly. Familiarity with every detail is critical. Porrett continued. Our scabbard thief replaced the log in the gallery, yet knew not to disturb the mental's papers. Our shot fired came from a weapon stored in your sister's chamber, but rifled in the smithy downtown, and our vendetta note was scrawled in Henry's own hand style. Perhaps copied. He lifted his gloved finger. All this points to one individual, our London solicitor, Mr. Crawford. He had motive to shift trusteeship means to forge documents and access your private papers and opportunity to move freely between town and estate. A gasp rose from Lady Penelope. Lord Carrington's face whitened. Eliza's jaw dropped. Smythe snapped his eyes toward the door and shrank back. Dr. Harrington blinked in astonishment. But how? Demanded Lord Carrington. He arrived only yesterday. Porrett allowed a faint smile. He arrived and remained in the hidden wing. Unknown to most, he used the hollow birch path under cover of dark to plant vendetta. Fired the shot from the custom-rifled weapon acquired under false pretenses. And then retrieved the Carrington key from Smythe's office where our butler, believing it routine, left it unattended. The theft of the scabbard was his final act before fleeing. Inspector Mary rose with determination. We shall detain him at once. Porrett inclined his head. Yes, notify the constabulary. But first, we must confirm his whereabouts last night and examine his briefcase for those hidden letters. As the household stirred into action, a sense of relief washed over them, tempered by shock at the betrayal rooted not within the family, but among those they welcomed. Outside, the birches whispered once more, their pale trunks bearing silent witness to secrets brought into light, and within Birchwood Estate, the hidden connections had been revealed. Drawing the net ever tighter round the true architect of vendetta. Chapter 10. Porrett's Secret. Late morning. Sunshine filtered through the stained glass windows of Birchwood's oak-panelled study as Porrett sat alone at the desk, the room heavy with the scent of old leather and polished wood. He methodically laid out the items he had gathered, the monogrammed glove, the torn photograph, the custom bullet casing, and the Carrington ledger. Each piece had guided him thus far. Yet something still eluded capture an invisible thread that bound the two crimes into a seamless whole. He closed his eyes and allowed his little grey cells to sift through every detail. The forged vendetta note, the staged revolver, The stolen scabbard, the London solicitor's abrupt appearance, all pointed to Mr. Crawford, and yet Porritt fell to subtle dissonance. Like a single sour note in a harmonious chord, he opened his eyes, fixed on the torn photograph once more. He had already revealed its significance that Crawford's assistant had taken it, but what if the photograph held another secret? He retrieved a magnifying glass from his pocket and examined the paper's edge. The tear was jagged, almost mechanical, as though made by a tool rather than by hand. Yet the photograph itself bore a faint watermark, the initials HF, for Henry Fitzwilliam disguised beneath the image. That watermark meant the photograph was not from Crawford's London studio, but printed from Henry's own estate camera. Someone had used Fitzwilliam's personal photographs to implicate Eliza and stage a misdirection. Porritt's mustache twitched. The thought that Crawford had accessed Fitzwilliam's camera suggested inside help someone on the estate, not Crawford alone. He rose and strode to the window, where he noticed a fine dusting of footprints on the sill's ledge. The sash had been lowered at some point, yet the latch showed no sign of forced entry. The footprints were small, lightly treaded. He knelt and traced the prints with his finger. High-arched soles, narrow heels, a woman's boot no, too slender for Lady Eliza's gait. Closer to Anne's size, though her boots bore a sturdy heel. Yet these impressions were different, softer, more flexible, as if made in slippers trimmed with ribbon. Slippers. He recalled seeing a pair of embroidered house slippers by the hearth earlier beyond their owners. Usual chambers. He hurried to the mantel where he had placed the glove and ledger. Directly beneath the family portrait lay a pair of small, ribbon-trimmed slippers, cream silk embroidered with ivy. They bore no monogram, but matched neither Anne's sturdy footwear, nor Lady Eliza's finely made boots. They belonged to some eon intimate with the house, yet favouring. Informal comfort, perhaps, a guest using the hidden wing. Porritt picked up the slippers and examined them carefully. The silk was worn on the soles, as if habitually used to traverse wood floors. Inside one, a small smear of rose-petal residue wild. Rose pollen. The same flowers Lady Penelope claimed were mistakenly delivered. The slippers had brushed against the roses, likely in the corridor near her chambers. He realized then that Lady Penelope's report of cigar smoke and roses both served misdirection, planted to implicate Crawford's late-night visitor. He returned to the desk and consulted his notebook. Flipping back to Anne's interview, she had mentioned a lantern near the stables at 1:20 a.m. and unaccounted on when Fitzwilliam's lantern light flickered among the horses, but he had treated that as evidence of Fitzwilliam's patrol, not as a clue to the assailant's method of entry. Now it clicked. The hidden wing corridor connecting the gallery to the stables allowed someone in slippers silent and sloshed by to move between scenes without detection. Porritt rose again and fetched the estate's blueprints, spread them across the desk. Smoothing the creases, he traced the hidden wing path, a narrow service corridor, and lit, connecting the gallery on one end and the stables on the other. He marked the location of a small vent above the gallery's display case, large enough to drop a slender scabbard. Without opening the main door, he recalled the glass case's lock had not been forced. The vent had allowed removal and passage of the scabbard beneath the floorboards. He removed a floorboard from the plan and noted its position, directly above the stable's tack room. The ridge leading to Fitzwilliam's lantern patrol coincided with this route. The culprit had used the stable wings, climbing through the vent in slippers to steal the scabbard, then retraced steps to frame Crawford for the theft and the shot. But who wore the slippers? He inspected the slippers' embroidery, a subtle ivy motif matching the family crest's board-ran heirloom design reproduced only on linens in Lady Penelope's private suite. The silk slippers belonged to Lady Penelope herself. His mind reeled. The mistress of the house had orchestrated the misdirection. using her own slippers to traverse the hidden corridor. He laid the slippers beside the glove monogram they see. And the ledger. The glove had implicated Eliza. The revolver had pointed to her. The photograph had suggested her secret liaison. And now the slippers and watermark revealed the true architect, Lady Penelope Carrington. Her motive lay in the codicil Crawford delivered a document that threatened to reduce her inheritance. By eliminating Fitzwilliam and seizing the scabbard, she would destroy the codicil's proof, maintain sole trusteeship, and preserve her position. Poirot paused, placing a single gloved finger on the ledger. The confidential payments marked EC had deceived him. Those entries had masked Penelope's own diversion of funds, recorded under her sister's initials. She had used Eliza's ledger code to fund Fitzwilliam's hush payments. Then blamed Eliza when the payments imbued suspicion. Every misstep had been crafted to shift guilt onto someone else. Eliza, Smythe, even Crawford. He sank into the desk chair, letting the revelation settle. The estate's matriarch, gentle and gracious in outward appearance, had manipulated friend and family alike, orchestrating a vendetta against Fitzwilliam for his knowledge of the codicil. The volley of clues, the staged glove, the planted revolver, the forged photograph, the stolen scabbard all served her plan to erase any threat to her inheritance. At that moment, Hastings tapped gently at the door and entered. Notebook in hand. "Monsieur, have you found what you sought?" His eyes widened at the display. Slippers, glove, ledger. Poirot inclined his head. "Yes, Hastings, we have overlooked the mistress of the house." He stood, buttoning his coat. She walked unseen through the hidden wing, garbed in slippers to execute her design. "Monsieur Mary and I shall confront her in the drawing-room." He tucked the slippers into a cloth and rose. "The little grey cells have spoken once, more, and now the final act draws near." With a determined stride, he left the study, leaving the silent proofs behind. Outside, the birches whispered, their leaves quivering as though awaiting the grand reveal that would bring justice or despair to Birchwood Estate. Chapter 11. Tensions rise. Late afternoon shadows lengthened across the grand salon, where the household of Birchwood Manor had been summoned once again. The air was thick with unease. Every corner of the room seemed to thrum with suspicion. Poirot stood near the marble Montelbys, flanked by Inspector Mallory, while Hastings lingered just behind, pen poised. One by one, the assembled suspects took their places. Lady Penelope Carrington, pale and composed. Lord Carrington, his jaw clenched. Eliza, hands folded tightly. Mr. Smythe, shoulders drawn. Dr. Harrington, arms crossed, and Thorpe, who twisted the corner of her apron. Poirot raised a gloved hand. "Msamus, we have uncovered a secret path through this house and identified footprints, a watermark, and a pair of slippers belonging to one among you. Yet no accusations are made lightly. We must observe how tensions shape your responses to what you know." He turned to Lady Penelope, who met his gaze without flinching. "Madam, you have remained calm under pressure, but calmness can be a cloak for guilt. Tell us, how do you feel, knowing your slippers were found on the route between the galley and the stables?" Lady Penelope's lips pressed together. Her voice, when it came, was steady, curious and concerned. "Monsieur, I wear those slippers for comfort, not for nocturnal mischief. If they were anywhere, it is because I left them in the corridor." She gestured to the floor. "I did not use that passage at night." Eliza's eyes flicked toward her sister. "Penelope, you forget that you yourself complained of insomnia and wandered the halls." Her tone sharpened. "You admitted to pacing when you could not sleep." Lady Penelope's cheeks flamed. "I walked the east wing, not the corridor leading to the gallery." Eliza rose, folding her arms. Yet only you wear such slippers, and only you know their presence beneath the portraits. Lord Carrington intervened. Ladies, please. His voice trembled. We are here to find the truth, not to quarrel. He looked at Poirot. Surely a gentleman detective should not allow this to become a family dispute. Poirot inclined. His head, nous probrissons, tensions reveal character. Now, Mr. Smythe, you polished the glass case this morning, yet you did not mention a second glove found here. He tapped the mantel. Why conceal evidence, monsieur? Smythe swallowed. I feared that to mention it, I would be accused of hiding it myself. I thought better to bring it to Monsieur Poirot's attention privately. His eyes darted to Lady Penelope. I did not wish to sow discord. Dr. Harrington leaned forward. You should have spoken sooner. Delay breeds distrust. He squared his shoulders. We are professionals, are we not? Should not speak plainly. And Thorpe lowered her eyes. Distress can freeze one's tongue. She looked to Eliza. Mademoiselle said secrets must be kept. Her voice faltered between loyalty and fear. Eliza's expression softened. I meant only those entrusted to me by my sister. Dear Henry, she turned to Lord Carrington. Father, this constant mistrust fractures us. Lord Carrington's face was drawn. All this intrigue last week. We left here planning the gala. Now we suspect the air itself. Poirot observed the unfolding drama with keen interest. And yet, monsieur, you, too, have reason to fear. The missing letters in the scabbard could expose financial misappropriations payments marked. Issy might reflect on recorded transfers. He met Lord Carrington's gaze. Is it not true you diverted funds for estate security to less official accounts? Lord Carrington's forehead creased. Those funds were to protect the estate from poachers and would-be thieves, I meant. No concealment, only discretion. His voice quavered under the weight of his own words. Poirot's mustache twitched. Discretion. Yes, but secrecy. Too, a fine line. Next, Dr. Harrington. You commented that the bullet was fired from a specialist barrel. You had that barrel made. Why? For sporting challenges, or something more personal. The doctor's cheeks colored. I commissioned it from moonlight target practice in the grove, a harmless hobby. He folded his arms defensively. No deeper motive, and shifted, glancing at Smythe. Moonlight practice can awaken suspicion. Doctor, Poirot smiled. Inwardly, noting each crack in composure. Now, we probe further. Lady Penelope, you reported a visitor's cigar smoke, but no visitor entered through the front. You said Mr. Crawford called, yet his carriage was seen leaving at dawn. Why did you invite him at such an hour? Lady Penelope's steady veneer faltered. She exhaled slowly. I wished to provide comfort. He was distraught over the codicil and missing letters. He begged me to consider delaying its execution. Her voice trembled. I allowed him to stay in the hidden wing to avoid scandal. Eliza's eyes narrowed. You sheltered him here, knowing your husband's signature could be obtained. Her voice softened, perhaps too eagerly. She bit her lip. I feared for you. Lord Carrington closed his eyes briefly. I signed in haste, trusting the solicitor's words, and raised her voice. The pressing of ink can mislead. We all sign what we wish to believe, Poirot held up a hand. Let us not be swept away by emotions alone. He turned to Hastings. Record this. Family conflict, professional pride, concealed alliances. He gazed once more at Lady Penelope. Madam, each of you has confessed to a variant of fear of exposure, fear of scandal, fear of loss. But fear can be manufactured. We must discern genuine remorse from calculated performance. He beckoned Inspector Mary. Would you please retrieve the London solicitor's briefcase? We shall inspect his documents. In private. Mallory nodded and departed. Poirot addressed the remaining group. Until he returns, reflect on this. Trust, once broken, cannot easily be mended. The closer we were, the more devastating the betrayal. He paused, letting the weight of his words permeate the room. Tomorrow, I shall complete this inquiry, but for tonight, consider how your alliances shift. Sister against sister, servant against master, professional against colleague. Silence fell, punctuated only by the crackle of the fire. Each person seemed absorbed in inner turmoil, replaying recent revelations. At last, Porritt turned to Hastings. Mon ami, note well their reactions. The cracks in their speech, those are the fissures leading to the heart of this mystery. Hastings bowed. Pen flying across the paper, Porritt swept from the room, leaving the suspects to their uneasy reflections. Outside, the evening mist crept round Birchwood's skirts, and within its halls, loyalties wavered like candle flames in a draught. The psychological pressures had mounted. Now trust and suspicion would collide, and only the truth, once revealed, would bring peace or further despair to these troubled souls. Chapter 12. The confrontation's drawing room's heavy curtains were drawn against the encroaching dusk, lending the space an atmosphere at once intimate and claustrophobic. A single lamp cast pools of golden light on the polished teak floor and the deep pile of the rub. Porritt stood before the hearth, flanked by Inspector Mallory and Hastings. The remaining household members, Lord and Lady Carrington, Eliza, Dr. Harrington, Mr. Smythe, and Thorpe occupied chairs ranged in a semicircle, their faces pale with anticipation. Porritt surveyed them silently for a moment, his tiny mustache quivering in the dim light. Then, with deliberate calm, he spoke. Msamas, we have reached the moment of confrontation. Each of you has played a part, whether as instigator, accomplice, or unwitting pawn in the crimes that have befallen this estate. Tonight, the truth must emerge. He turned to Lady Penelope, whose posture remained rigid despite the weight of suspicion. Madam, you claimed to wear your slippers only for comfort. Yet those very slippers were found not in your private chambers, but along the hidden corridor linking the gallery to the stables. How came they there? Lady Penelope's fingers tightened round her lapels. She inhaled, slow and measured. I have already explained, Monsieur Porritt. I left them near the hearth after rising in the night with a headache. I did not traverse that corridor. Porritt inclined his head. A plausible tale. Yet these footprints, he nodded to an image Hastings had propped beside him, reveal a path from Lady Penelope's suite, across the gallery, and down to the stable vent. Who, then, could have left such prints, if not yourself? A tremor passed through her. Perhaps someone took them to frame me. Her voice cracked. He allowed the moment to stretch before he pivoted smoothly to the ledger. And these entries marked EC, intended to disguise misdirected payments. They suggested your sister's initials, yet the handwriting matches yours precisely. You used Eliza's code to conceal funds you diverted for unknown purposes. Admit it, you feared the codicil that would have stripped you of your majority share. Her eyes widened. She sprang to her feet. That is a lie. The lamp's glow caught the sheen of her tears. I paid Fitzwilliam to guard the estate's treasures. I did not. Silence. Madam, Porritt's tone was firm but gentle. Your payments were hidden under Eliza's cipher, but the sums went not to security, but to an account under your control. The scabbard theft was timed to prevent the codicil's disclosure. You planned to destroy those letters, thus preserving your inheritance. Lady Penelope's lips parted, then snapped shut. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She paced a step closer to the hearth. You have no proof, only conjecture. Her voice tightened, voice quavering on the last word. Proof. Porritt repeated softly. He tapped the torn photograph. This photo, bearing Fitzwilliam's watermark. Shows you meeting him at midnight in the gallery. You rehearsed the staging to implicate Eliza, using your own image printed from his camera. He held her gaze. You knew of the hidden vent. You used your slippers to move silently. Retrieved the letters, and fired the shot to wound Fitzwilliam, ensuring he could not produce the codicil. Lady Penelope reeled. She slumped into a chair, pressing her palms to her temples. The others exchanged glances. Lord Carrington's face a mask of horror, Eliza's hand flying to her mouth. Anne's eyes wide with shock, even Smyther's composure cracked. Poirot stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Madam, your final mistake was this. You assumed your sister would protect you. You left the scabbard near the portrait of great-grandmother to catch Eliza's glove. Yet you overlooked one detail. The rose pollen on your slippers matched the wild roses delivered to Lady Penelope's. Boudoir roses Henry collected for you. At dusk, only you knew of that error, and only you could have carried the scabbard through the rose-lined corridor without discarding the pollen." Tears spilled down Lady Penelope's cheeks. She pressed a gloved hand to her mouth, trembling. "I only meant to protect my future. When I learned of the codicil, I panicked. Henry was loyal to Eliza's trust, not mine. I sought to frighten him, not kill him. I never meant harm." The room was silent but for sobs. Poirot inclined his head once. Fear can drive even the most gentle heart to desperate acts. Yet justice must prevail. He turned to Inspector Mary. "Monsieur l'Inspecteur, I believe we have uncovered the perpetrator of the vendetta and the archivist of secrets." Mallory stepped forward. Producing handcuffs, he approached Lady Penelope, whose shoulders sagged in resignation. Lord Carrington rose and placed a trembling hand on his wife's shoulder. "Penelope." His voice broke. Eliza crossed to her, kneeling. "Sister," she whispered. "I never imagined," and slipped away silently. Weeping, Smythe bowed his head. Dr. Harrington remained stoic, but with sorrow in his eyes. Hastings watched, pen still in hand, the final note awaiting. Poirot remained by the hearth. He surveyed the tableau, a family fractured by fear and ambition. Then, softly, he added, "Madam, you will have every opportunity to explain your actions in the proper forum. I trust that you, like us all, will reflect upon the consequences of hidden motives and silenced truths." Lady Penelope looked up, her tear-streaked face composed in a final gesture of dignity. She allowed Mary to secure her wrists. As she was led away, the drawing-room's hush deepened. Outside, the birch trees swayed in the evening breeze, their pale boughs whispering against the windows. Within, the unmasked vendetta lay bare, and the final act of justice awaited its denouement. Poirot exhaled slowly, the tension easing from his frame. The confrontation was complete. Only the resolution remained. Chapter 13. A desperate attempt. To escape a thin veil of moonlight seeped through the high windows of Birchwood Manor's west wing as the household drifted off to an easy slumber. In the guardroom adjacent to Lady Penelope's chambers, Inspector Mary dozed in an armchair, cane propped against the wall. Hastings kept vigil beside him, notebook in hand, recording the day's revelations. Outside, a solitary lantern flickered. In the corridor, casting long shadows against the patterned carpet within her room, Lady Penelope lay motionless on the chaise longue, feigning exhaustion. The door stood ajar, its latch weakened by a slender pick hidden in the cuff of her dressing gown, as the grandfather clock struck midnight. She slid silently to her feet and crossed to the night table with delicate precision. She retrieved the discarded hairpin and set to work on the lock. A soft click followed the faint scrape of metal, and the door eased open, heart pounding. She slipped into the corridor, wrapping her silken slippers round her feet. The slippers, so carefully chosen for stealth, pressed softly into the carpet's pile. She paused at the guardroom entrance, listening for snoring, but heard only the steady tick of the clock. A slender beam of moonlight glinted off the cane beside Mallory's chair. The inspector slumbered soundly, unaware, with trembling fingers. Lady Penelope lifted the cane and carried it behind her back, its weight reassuring. She patted down the corridor, moving toward the hidden wing. In her mind's eye, she envisioned the narrow service passage, the vent above the gallery case, and the scabbard still lodged within the family sword sheath. She needed it. Those letters sealed inside the scabbard were her only defense. Without them, she faced disgrace and perhaps legal ruin. The corridor door to the gallery stood ajar, just as Poirot had described. She pressed a hand to her lips and eased it open. The hinges unstuck from months of disuse inside. The gallery was bathed in ghostly light. The ancestral portraits gazing down like silent sentinels, the glass case loomed at the far end. She moved forward, placing the borrowed cane against the bricks beneath the ventatool to lever the grate. With measured effort, she hooked the cane's crook into the vent's handle and tugged. The grate released with a low metallic groan. Her heart leapt as she swung it open, careful not to disturb the portraits. Within the hidden cavity lay the scabbard. Its leather scuffed from its earlier removal. She reached in, fingers brushing the cold metal, and extracted it. Instinctively, she cradled the scabbard against her chest, then lifted the sword blade to reveal the document sealed within, the codicil, bound in crimson ribbon and stamped with wax, slipped into her grasp. Relief washed through her. With the codicil in her possession, she could confront Crawford and the Carringtons at dawn, restoring her standing. A soft click echoed in the gallery. The door behind her moved. She froze, heartbeat thunderous in her ears. Footsteps approached across the marble floor. In haste, she replaced the scabbard and closed the grate. Though leaves of paper fluttered at the edge, Lady Penelope, came a voice calm, yet imbued with authority. She turned to see Poirot standing in the doorway, his expression inscrutable beneath the brim of his hat. Behind him, Mallory and Hastings blocked her retreat. Her breath caught. Monsieur Poirot, she whispered, clutching the scabbard to her side. I must. He raised a gloved hand. Permit me. He stepped forward with deliberate calm. You have taken the scabbard once more, and even now possess the codicil. But the little grey cells anticipated this. You see, I anticipated. The fatal flaw in your plan. The pollen in your slippers matched not only the wild roses you gathered, but also the rare night-blooming jasmine beneath the gallery window. Lady Penelope's eyes darted to the floor, where a pale petal lay crushed beneath her slipper. Night-blooming jasmine. She breathed. Impossible, no jasmine grows here. Precisely, Poirot replied. It grows in the hidden conservatory to the east, beyond the stables. You traversed that path to disguise your footprints among others. He gestured to the open vent. And the powder I collected from the floorboards, powdered lime from the stables tack room, swept into the corridor to mask the lightest trace of slipper sole. Ingenious, but insufficient. She took a trembling step back. You knew everything. Her voice broke. I knew enough. Poirot flipped back a glove and showed the monogrammed lining. Inside, a smudge of lime powder that matched Smyther's barn sweepings, and on the codicil's ribbon, a fingerprint, your fingerprint lifted, from the tea tray you carried at dinner. He held the codicil aloft, and so, I could predict this moment. Mallory moved to secure the scabbard and codicil. Lady Penelope, you are under arrest for attempted destruction of evidence and attempted escape. She collapsed into a chair, shoulders shaking. I only wanted to save my family, she sobbed. I did not intend more harm. Hastings bent to retrieve the fallen hairpin from the floor. A pity, he murmured. Handing it to Mallory, even the smallest tool can be a key to one's destiny. Poirot inclined his head in sympathy. Fear can lead the best of hearts astray, yet night's desperate act here ends in dawn's clarity. He turned toward the scabbard. You will find, Inspector, that the letters remain intact, albeit slightly damp from the corridor's dew. That they survived is a testament to the importance of preservation. Inspector Mary snapped handcuffs onto Lady Penelope's wrists, then held out a hand to Hastings. Come, Molony. Let us return to the salon. As they departed, Poirot stood alone in the moonlit gallery, gazing at the closed grate. He replaced the scabbard, lining it carefully within the case, and secured the lock with the master key. He paused, finger on his lips, then drew a final breath. Outside, the birch trees swayed in the night breeze, their silver bark luminous against the sky. Within the Birchwood Manor, the desperate attempt to escape had been thwarted, and all that remained was the final peace justice for Henry Fitzwilliam and the Carrington legacy. The little grey cells had once more prevailed, illuminating the darkest corridors of deceit. Thought for a couple of seconds. Chapter 14. The final piece falls into placid first shouts of dawn slip tea. Through the tall windows of the morning room, casting pale streaks across plush upholstery and polished oak floors, word had spread that Henry Fitzwilliam had regained consciousness in the infirmary, and the household assembled their intrepidation. Poirot, Hastings at his side, entered quietly to find the gamekeeper propped against a bolster, bruise blooming on his temple, eyes weary yet clear. Monsieur Fitzwilliam, Poirot greeted softly. I trust you are in better spirits. Fitzwilliam managed a weak nod. Better, sir. The doctor says I'm fortunate to live, but some things trouble me still. Poirot inclined his head. Then speak freely. You are among friends, and justice is our aim. The gamekeeper winced as the doctor loosened a bandage. I recall the shot, of course, but afterward I heard a whisper. Keep silent, or the forest will claim more than vengeance. I thought it Penelope's voice. I saw a figure leaning over me, gloved and elegant. He clenched a fist. I forbade her from returning, but the memory lingered. Poirot's eyes glowed. You heard words you believed from Lady Penelope. He removed his gloves, revealing a fine silk handkerchief. May I? Fitzwilliam allowed him passage to his bed. Poirot dabbed gently at the bruise. The hand that lifted the revolver also offered threats. Yet Penelope was under guard. He pocketed the handkerchief. Proceed, if you may. The gamekeeper closed his eyes briefly. When I awoke, I found this clutched in my hand. He extended a trembling palm. There lay a single scrap of parchment, edges torn. Reading, the last secret lies where iron meets wood. Hastings bent to examine the note. Iron meets wood, the forge. Poirot nodded. Or perhaps the gates. Dear friend, did you find this alone? Fitzwilliam shook his head. No one else was near. I believe the note was slipped into my fist before I lost consciousness. Poirot folded the parchment and slipped it into his coat. Mercy, this is our final clue. He rose, motioning to Hastings. Come. Hastings, to the forge. The forge lay beyond the stables, where the blacksmith's hammer rang against incandescent iron. The smith, a burly man with soot-streaked arms, stepped aside at Poirot's approach. Hastings followed, notebook in hand. Here, Poirot murmured, tracing one finger along the anvil's edge. The anvil table meets the wooden beam. Above, look for irregularities. Hastings studied the wooden support. There's a loose plank here. Poirot tapped the beam until the plank shifted inward, revealing a narrow cavity. Inside lay a small iron box, its surface mottled with rust. He extracted it carefully and placed it on the anvil, prying the lid with his penknife. within layer. Bundle of letters, bound by ribbon the missing correspondence between Mr. Crawford and Lady Penelope, detailing their clandestine plan to alter the will, ensure Penelope's majority share, and silence anyone who knew too much. Hastings exhaled sharply, the conspiracy in black and white. Porritt glanced at the letters, then at Hastings. These letters confirm every hypothesis. Penelope's panic, Crawford's counsel, Fitzwilliam's threat to expose them. The threat on Henry's ear was not an idle menace, it was a promise to eliminate witnesses. He pocketed the letters. The iron met the wood, as the note said, and within lay the proof. We have but one step remaining. Back in the drawing-room, the household reconvened. Lord Carrington's shoulders stooped. Eliza sat with head bowed. Smythe and Dr. Harrington exchanged troubled glances and clenched her hands. Crawford, detained. In a corner, watched with stony reserve, Inspector Mallory stood by the mantel. Porritt at his side. Porritt addressed the gathering. Zamis. We possess the final piece of evidence. The letters hidden in the forger's wooden beam. They reveal a conspiracy between Lady Penelope Carrington and Mr. Crawford, plotting to reshape the will and silence Henry Fitzwilliam. The note found in Henry's hand. The last secret lies where iron meets wood. Let us hear. He drew the ribbon-bound letters from his coat. These are the fruits of your scheme. He turned to Lady Penelope, who sat pale and trembling. Madam, you face now not only the attempted murder of a loyal friend, but conspiracy to pervert justice and defraud your family. Her eyes brimmed. She rose shakily. I conspired, but I love my family and feared its ruin. Her voice cracked. I believed Henry would betray my confidence. I never wished him dead, only silenced. Lord Carrington strode forward. Penelope, you deceived us all. His tone wavered between anger and sorrow. You used love as your weapon. Eliza stood beside her brother. You nearly destroyed us. Her lips trembled and stepped forward, voice small. I trusted you, and you used my silence. Smythe bowed his head. I served loyally, but was blind. Dr. Harrington's voice was tight. Even compassion cannot justify violence. Crawford's eyes narrowed. My letters guided her hand. I sought only to help her. His smug expression faded under Porritt's gaze. Porritt held up a hand. Enough. The law will judge you fairly. To Mallory, he said, Monsieur l'Inspecteur, secure these documents and prepare charges. Mallory nodded. Taking the letters, he moved to arrest Crawford, then gestured to Penelope Scott. Porritt turned to Fitzwilliam, who had entered, quietly with the doctor's assistance. Monsieur Fitzwilliam, you recovered admirably. Fitzwilliam nodded. Dignity restored. Thanks to you, monsieur. I feared I would never vindicate myself. Porritt smiled gently. You're a Christian. Keeping that note saved us all. It led us to the forge. You, too, played your part. He addressed the room one last time. Thus concludes our investigation, a tale of fear, betrayal, and redemption. The little grey cells have unmasked the darkness that crept within these walls. May truth and justice now guide Birchwood Estate toward healing. As the inspector escorted Penelope and Crawford away, the household stood silent, absorbing the weight of revelations. Outside, the birches swayed in the morning breeze, their pale trunks shimmering in the renewed sunlight. Within Birchwood Manor, the final piece had fallen into place, and with it, the promise of a new beginning. Thought for a couple of seconds. Chapter 15, the final gathering drawing-room, where so many secrets had been unveiled, now glowed with crisp mid-morning light streaming through tall windows. The assembled household entered in near silence. Lord Carrington, his expression grave yet resolute. Eliza, composed though her eyes flickered with lingering doubt. Dr. Harrington, arms folded as though bracing himself, Mr. Smythe, shoulders square in dutiful tension, and Thorpe, clutching her apron with white-knuckled fingers, and even Inspector Mallory, who wore his professional stennis-like armor. Hastings hovered discreetly by the piano, ready to record every nuance. In the center of the room, a small table bore the assembled evidence: the hollow birch log, the monogrammed glove, the forged photograph, the custom bullet casing, the stolen scabbard, and the bundle of incriminating letters. Poirot stood before the mantel, hands clasped behind his back, mustache immaculately waxed, little grey cells aflutter with anticipation. He cast a calm, measured look round the circle. Samus, we gather here one final time, not to accuse without counsel, but to reconstruct the steps of this intricate drama. Each of you played a part, some knowingly, some unwittingly, in the events that brought us to this morning. It is fitting that all key players witness the tapestry of clues before the final thread is drawn. He lifted the hollow birch log with gentle reverence. Firstly, the log itself, split with craft and hidden on the veranda, concealing a scrawled note of vendetta. That note, penned in Fitzwilliam's handwriting style but forged in a lab's ink, was intended to mislead us into believing a servant's betrayal. Yet the craftsmanship of the split revealed a practiced hand. He placed the log back down. Next, he picked up the torn photograph. This image depicted Lady Eliza in clandestine conference with Henry at midnight. It too was forged, printed from Fitzwilliam's own estate camera, and crudely torn to implicate her. The watermark HF lay hidden beneath the image's gloss, a telltale sign of misdirection. He set the photograph beside the log and examined the bullet casing. Then there was the graze to Fitzwilliam's temple, delivered with chilling precision. The casing's rifling marks matched a specialist barrel commissioned by Dr. Harrington, but only latently, for the true custom barrel was hidden in the forge. The sporting revolver in Eliza's boudoir, though superficially matching, lacked the barrel's deep grooves. That was the first false lead. Poirot paused, allowing the weight of each revelation to settle. He turned to Dr. Harrington. Doctor, your midnight visits to the stables were ostensibly for animal care, yet also to retrieve the scabbard and to bury evidence back in the forge's beam. Dr. Harrington's fingers tightened round his coat lapels. Poirot moved to the scabbard, displayed upright, the Carrington scabbard plucked from its glass case without force, passed through a hidden vent above the Gary vent, knowledge only held by those who walked the secret corridor by Slipper's tread. He indicated Anne's apron, hands. Breath came in quiet rushes. He then lifted the pair of cream silk slippers. These slippers, dusted with wild rose pollen and lime from the tack room, traced the thief's path from Lady Penelope's boudoir, where she claimed insomnia, through the Gary, and to the forge in the dead of night, a path known to few. He replaced the slippers gently. Poirot folded his hands and faced the group. Each clue leads inexorably to one person who wove them together. The room tightened. Lord Carrington's breath caught. Eliza gazed away. Smythe's foot tapped. Anne's eyes brimmed. Poirot tapped the bundle of letters on the table. And these letters' correspondence between Lady Penelope and Mr. Crawford mapped the conspiracy to alter the will and silence Fitzwilliam. Liam. They were hidden in the forge's wooden beam, revealed by the cryptic note found in Henry's hand. The last secret lies where iron meets wood. He stepped back, sweeping his gaze over them. We have reconstructed motive, means, and opportunity. We have seen how alliances shifted and how fear masked itself as loyalty. He paused, ensuring each person met his eyes. Now, before the final revelation, I invite you to absorb these truths. Tomorrow, I shall disclose the identity of the architect of vendetta and the bearer of each deception. Until then, reflect upon how closely love and betrayal can intertwine. A solemn hush followed. Lord Carrington exhaled and gently touched Liz's arm. Dr. Harrington straightened, as though awakened from a trance. Smythe bowed his head, and lips quivered. Even Inspector Mary, usually unshakable, met Poirot's eyes with newfound respect. Poirot inclined his head. "Merci, Msamas. We stand on the threshold of justice. May our minds remain steady in anticipation of the final." Unveiling. With that, he swept from the room, leaving the suspects to their reflections. The assembled evidence shimmering beneath the rising sun, the stage set for the conclusive reveal of truth and consequence. See. After 16, the revealed morning sun had climbed higher when Poirot summoned the household to the oak-panelled drawing-room for the long-anticipated revelation. The assembled faces Lord and Lady Carrington, Eliza, Dr. Harrington, Mr. Smythe and Thorpe, and even Inspector Mallory wore expressions taut with apprehension. Each person found a seat in the semicircle round the hearth, where Poirot stood, his posture elegantly erect, moustache bristling with purpose. Poirot surveyed them in silence, allowing the hush to deepen. Then, with measured calm, he spoke. "Msamas, we have examined every clue, traced every footprint, and unraveled every deception. It is time to expose the architect of these crimes. I ask that you listen closely, for the truth binds many threads. Into a tapestry most unexpected, he lifted the hollow birch log first. This log carried the first message, vendetta. It was split and resealed by skilled hands. Who knew the forest paths where this particular birch grew? Only Henry Fitzwilliam and one other. Yet the note was forged in lab-grade ink, not by Fitzwilliam, but by someone with access to the estate's laboratory. He paused. Letting that linger. He then displayed the monogrammed glove. Missives of guilt were cast upon Lady Eliza, whose glove conveniently lay near the scene. Yet that glove was planted. The true wearer of the glove monogram EC is none other than Lord Carrington himself. He borrowed his sister's pair to divert suspicion when cleaning the galley, the same glove left behind by Dare. "Igen." A murmur rippled through the room. Lord Carrington's cheeks flushed. Poirot raised his hand, forestalling interruption. "Allow me to proceed." He produced the forged photograph next. This image was printed from Henry's camera, torn to implicate Eliza. Yet the watermark HF was only revealed upon magnification. Who had access to both the camera and the printing chamber? Dr. Harrington did, as a state physician and amateur photographer. He sought to frame Eliza to cover his own entanglements with debts and health secrets that Eliza knew of. Dr. Harrington paled, opening his mouth to speak. Poirot continued, but the greatest misdirection lay in the bullet casing. The custom rifling matched the barrel commissioned by Dr. Harrington, yet the weapon in Eliza's boudoir was a mere sporting revolver. The true barrel was hidden in the forge, accessible only to Mr. Smythe, who maintained the state equipment. He lent it to Dr. Harrington under cover of night. Poirot's gaze flicked to Mr. Smythe, whose jaw clenched, an alibi forged by friendship, but undone by powder residues on Smythe's carriage boot, slime and jasmine from the hidden conservatory traced directly to Lady Penelope's slippers. Shock rippled as Lady Penelope gasped. Poirot held up the cream silk slippers. These slippers, dusted with wild rose pollen and lime, led us through the secret corridor to the forge. But the fragments of jasmine pollen betray another presence. Dr. Harrington's surgical mask, kept in the same conservatory for botanical specimens. He wore it to cover his face as he met Mr. Smythe in private, exchanging the barrel and sealing those letters. Dr. Harrington rose, shaking. "It was an arrangement one I regretted. We only meant to protect the estate, yet only one person had a motive strong enough to orchestrate all these acts." Poirot interrupted softly. "A motive rooted not in financial gain alone, but in fear of disgrace, a motive so personal that no other could match its intensity. He turned directly to Thorpe, whose face blanched. "Mademoiselle Thorpe, your fear of exposure and knowledge of Mr. Fitzwilliam's secret journal entries gave you a personal stake in silence. You delivered messages between Dr. Harrington and Lady Penelope, knowing each could use you to conceal their guilt. And you never spoke of the lantern light by the stables at 120 because you feared implicating yourself in their scheme." And shoulders slumped. I did what I thought best to protect those I trusted." Porritt inclined his head. "Trust. Misplaced. Mademoiselle," for the true mastermind was closer still. He stepped to the center of the room, placing his hands upon the mantel. Silence pressed in, and now. The final revelation, the architect of vendetta, the planner of the scabbard theft, the orchestrator of deception was none other than Lady Penelope Carrington. Her breath caught. She rose, trembling. More. But Porritt's voice was gentle yet unyielding. "Yes, madame, you feared the codicil that would diminish your legacy. You enlisted Crawford to draft it. Then turned on him when his footnotes threatened to implicate you. You ranged the shooting to wound Henry Fitzwilliam enough to silence him, yet not kill. You staged misdirections with Eliza's glove, Dr. Harrington's barrel, and Smither's carriage. You stole the scabbard by night, knowing the secret vent's path, and hid the codicil letters in the forge. When suspicion turned upon you, you attempted to retrieve them once more only to be thwarted by our little grey cells." Tears glistened in Lady Penelope's eyes. "Yes, I did. I panicked. I loved my family and feared losing everything." Lord Carrington approached her and took her hand. "Penelope, you should have spoken to me." Eliza stepped forward. "We could have helped." Anne's voice trembled. "We all had secrets, but none too important to share." Dr. Harrington nodded slowly. "And none worth endangering so many lives." Inspector Mallory advanced and placed a hand on Lady Penelope's arm. "Adam, you are charged with conspiracy, attempted murder, and theft of evidence." She closed her eyes, tears falling freely. "I understand." Porritt folded his hands. "Thus we complete the circle. No heart is immune to fear, and no secret impermeable to truth. Mzamas, justice has prevailed." He inclined his head. "May Birchwood Estate find healing, and may each of us remember that the greatest weapon is the truth." As Lady Penelope was escorted away, the room exhaled collectively, the tension dissolving into relief tinged with sorrow. Outside, the birch grove shimmered in the midday light, its branches whispering as though acknowledging the final uncovering of Vendetta's hidden design. And within Birchwood Manor, the curtain fell on a saga of ambition, betrayal, and, ultimately, redemption. Chapter 17, Outcome, and just as a crisp autumn morning enveloped Birchwood Estate, the air brisk with the promise of renewal. In the great hall, now cleared of evidence tables and investigative paraphernalia, a sense of calm had settled. The Carrington family and their household staff gathered once more, but this time under the sober ban. Out of resolution rather than suspicion, Porritt stood by the high windows, noting the tension that remained in worried smiles and tentative glances. He addressed the group with measured warmth. "Mzamas, in the wake of our final reveal, it is time to see justice take its course and for healing to begin." He gestured toward Henry Fitzwilliam, who had been brought from the infirmary to stand supported by Dr. Harrington at his side. The gamekeeper's once grey visage had regained healthy colour, and his eyes shone with gratitude. Dr. Harrington stepped forward. "I am pleased to report that Monsieur Fitzwilliam's wound has healed well. His prognosis is excellent, and he is fit to resume his duties if he so wishes." Fitzwilliam inclined his head in thanks, voice strong. "I owe my life to you all, yet I return not merely out of duty, but because these woods and this estate remain my home." Applause broke among the staff. Poirot continued, "Let us first acknowledge that no crime occurred in isolation. Each person's choice is born of fear, loyalty, or ambition wove together the tapestry of this affair. The law will determine formal consequences, yet emotional restitution must also be sought. Lord Carrington took his wife's place at his side, even though she remained in custody. He turned to his remaining family and staff. We have weathered a storm of betrayal, but now we must rebuild trust. He addressed Eliza. Sister, your integrity stood firm when suspicion threatened you. Your calm perseverance shone brightest in this darkness. He clasped her hand gently. Daughter Eliza offered a small, bittersweet smile. Thank you, Adrian. I only wish I could have prevented this sorrow. Next, Poirot looked to Thorpe, who stood, with her head bowed. Mademoiselle Thorpe, you carried messages in good faith, yet feared speaking until too late. Understand now that honesty, however difficult, is the foundation of service. And lifted her eyes, brimming with tears. I have learned that truth, once spoken, can be kinder than silence. Mr. Smythe, stoic as ever, bowed his head. Poirot addressed him. You maintain security and order, yet a loyalty misplaced merely facilitated grave misdeeds. Remember always that duty to justice must supersede personal allegiance. Smythe nodded solemnly. I shall serve Birchwood with renewed vigilance. Dr. Harrington stepped forward, acknowledging Poirot's gaze. I used compassion to conceal my own errors and led others astray. My practice resumes, guided by honesty. He exhaled with relief. Inspector Mallory, who stood by the door, offered a respectful nod. Monsieur Poirot, your little grey cells once more unearthed the path from darkness to daylight. The arrests of Lady Penelope Carrington and Mr. Crawford will proceed without undue delay. Poirot inclined his head. Thank you, Inspector. And now, a final note to our former guests. One's greatest crime is to forget mercy once justice is served. Let charity guide the future. He turned to Fitzwilliam. Henry, will you oversee the restoration of the hollow birch grove? Perhaps plant new seedlings alongside the old, symbolizing the renewal of trust and growth from adversity. Fitzwilliam's eyes brightened. It would be my honor, monsieur. A hush fell as the household absorbed the proposal. Then a ripple of enthusiastic assent rose. Gardening tools were fetched, and a plan was laid to replant the grove with new saplings, birches, and wildflowers to commemorate their trials and triumphs. As sunlight warmed the great hall, Poirot addressed the remaining family. In our journey through deception, misdirection, and fear, we have seen how easily love can morph into control, and how secrets can bind as surely as truth can liberate. Birchwood Estate stands at a crossroads, yet with unity and candor, it will flourish once again. Lord Carrington stepped forward and extended his hand to Poirot. Monsieur, you have saved this home and its people. How can we ever repay you? Poirot accepted the handshake with a gracious smile. Only by cherishing honesty and compassion. Justice is not a transaction, but a living practice. That afternoon, the household dispersed to tend the newly planted birches. Hastings lingered, in conversation with Mrs. Thorpe about floral arrangements, while Smythe helped deliver saplings. Even Dr. Harrington joined in, laughing as he muddied his gloves in service of the grove. In the distance, Fitzwilliam guided a young gardener to align rows of saplings, a promise of renewal. But amidst the growing roots and fresh earth, Poirot stood apart. Eyes on the horizon, where the birches would one day stand tall. He reflected upon the fragile weave of human relationships and the enduring power of justice. Then, with that small nod of satisfaction he reserved for acquired triumphs, he turned and walked toward the manor's entrance. ready for his next call. To duty and leaving behind a legacy of restored honor at Birchwood Estate, and so, under a sky now bright with hope, the tale of vendetta at Birchwood came to its close, a testament to the triumph of truth, the necessity of empathy, and the unwavering intellect of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 18. The closing remark. Late afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of Birchwood Manor's drawing-room, painting the polished floorboards in stripes of gold and shadow. Poirot stood by the hearth, his small frame framed by the marble mantel, the final echoes of the day's events still lingering in his thoughtful gaze round him. The surviving household members moved quietly, each immersed in the aftermath of revelations, reconciliation, and renewal. Henry Fitzwilliam entered first, leaning slightly on his cane, but bearing a serene smile. He approached Poirot, his deep gratitude clear in his bright eyes. "Monsieur, I owe you my life and my honor. I had feared that suspicion would forever darken my name. But thanks to your perseverance, I find instead the goodwill of friends, and forgiveness where I least expected it." Poirot inclined his head. "Mon cher ami, justice is not merely the avoidance of punishment, but the restoration of peace. May your days henceforth be marked by the rustle of leaves and the song of birds, rather than the whisper of deceit." Fitzwilliam's eyes glistened. He turned and offered a gentle nod to the Carringtons. In their expressions Poirot saw a mingling of remorse and relief, a family chastened but stronger, their bonds reforged in the crucible of truth. Lord Carrington then stepped forward, his military bearing softened by the humility of recent events. He grasped Poirot's hand firmly. "Monsieur, you have taught us that the greatest strength lies in vulnerability, admitting fault, seeking counsel, and trusting in goodness. Birchwood Estate owes you a debt that can never be repaid." Poirot's moustache quivered in a wry smile. "It is not a debt, monsieur, but a duty fulfilled. The little grey cells serve both justice and compassion." Eliza stood beside her brother, her composure restored. Poirot turned to her and offered a gracious bow. "Mademoiselle, your courage in facing false accusation without bitterness was exemplary. You have shown that integrity shines brightest in the darkest hour." Eliza's pale smile held tears. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. I only hope I shall live up to the example you have set in the corner." And Thorpe approached with tentative steps. Poirot knelt to meet her at a level, his voice kind. "Mademoiselle Thorpe, your loyalty carried you through fear. Remember now that loyalty to truth is the highest service one can render. Trust in yourself as we trust in you, and as shown." "I shall. Monsieur, you have given me confidence I never knew I possessed." Mr. Smythe and Dr. Harrington exchanged nods. Poirot addressed them together. "And you, gentlemen, guardians of order and health, have learned that attention to detail must include the moral order as well as the physical. May your vigilance be guided by conscience henceforth." Both men acknowledged him solemnly. Finally, Inspector Mallory stepped forward, his professional reserve softened by respect. "Poirot, I have long admired your methods. Today, I have witnessed their extraordinary compassion as well as their rigor." Poirot bowed. "Inspector, the law is but a codification of moral duty. You have served it well." A gentle silence fell, broken only by the distant call of a blackbird in the birch grove. Poirot surveyed the assembled faces, each marked by trials overcome, each poised on the threshold of new beginnings. He drew a slow breath, preparing his closing words. "Samus, we began this tale with vendetta, an act born of fear and wounded pride. We unraveled it through threads of misdirection, half-truths and staged suspicion. Along the way, we discovered that vengeance, like poison, infects the seeker as surely as the target. Yet, from this ordeal, emerged not only justice, but understanding and renewal." He extended a gloved hand toward the windows. Look upon these birches, ancient sentinels of Birchwood Estate. Their roots cling to the earth, their branches reach for the sky. They have witnessed generations of Carringtons and the secrets held within these walls. Today, they stand witness to a new chapter, one where secrets are not buried, but brought to light, where trust, though shaken, is rebuilt, where forgiveness plants new saplings of hope. He paused, eyes sweeping the room. The final lesson, I believe, is this, that human nature, for all its propensity for error, is sustained by the capacity to forgive, to learn, and to forge deeper bonds. Verdure may grow anew even in the soil enriched by sorrow. A hush followed, and then Henry Fitzwilliam stepped forward holding a small pot of wildflower seeds, a gift for Lady Eliza, who had tended the estate's gardens. He presented them with a gentle bow for the grove. He said softly, daughter Eliza accepted them, hands trembling for hope. Lord Carrington gripped his wife's hand, now freed from custody and standing quietly among them. Though many questions remained about the path that had led them here, in this moment family unity shone brightest. Porrid straightened, his small silhouette bathed in golden light. He offered one last nod. My work here is done. Should Birchwood Estate ever again call for clarity, I shall respond with pleasure. Until then, remember, to live with honesty is perhaps the finest adventure of all. With that, he swept his coat backhand, with Hastings at his side, exited through the grand doors into the corridor. Behind them, the household lingered in the drawing-room, no longer captive to fear or suspicion, but guided by a shared commitment to truth, compassion, and the enduring promise of dawn after darkness stood outside. The birch leaves quivered in the breeze as if applauding the resolution, and in that silent applause, the story of Birchwood Estate found its final, fitting repose.